and here's a person who has done this particular job, in the military in Italy, and obviously has a great knowledge base of many different things. So it's a very nice time.
Yeah, there's been kind of a sea of should we say diverse opinion on the Kerch Bridge event in the last 48 hours, and
yeah,
it's good to have good to have yet another expert military person like yourself on this space, Yehuda.
I don't know how expert I am, but I know a little bit. But I do know that that was not a truck bomb. Please stop sending me crazy things about it. Some people are saying I got this boat thing. I didn't know how many people are invested in this boat thing. Just really weird. But yeah, we'll find out. Look, it's in everyone's interest, the West and Russia, to not admit what it is. And just for for context to listeners, it's exactly the same thing that happened at Saki. Ukrainian media said it was a thing when it wasn't, and it later came out that it was a missile strike. So we'll figure it out. But it is pretty obvious to those who know a thing or two about artillery. And I will take obviously artillery person, an expert in artillery over others who are internet readers. I'm not trying to be mean, but just because someone done something totally unrelated and they got something right on another issue doesn't make you should stick to your wheelhouse. I think that's a good idea, and I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, and I'm going to go straight to John, another military expert we're lucky to have. John.
Thanks, Wendy, but not a military expert, mate. Question for Yehuda, though. On the bridge strike, one thing, and I wasn't on yesterday, so sorry if you've addressed this. Why would they hit the roadway and not the rail bridge? That's the only thing that I can't get my head around. Fully accept what everybody's, who is expert has said about it being an ATACMS strike, but why choose the roadway over the railway?
I mean, simple answer is I don't know. I can only guess. Perhaps it's meant to be symbolic. Perhaps it's meant to create an avenue for people to leave. Perhaps it's to demonstrate to the Russians we can do anything we want. We can hit the left side. We can hit the right side. We could do this. We could do that. Perhaps the bridge is next. Perhaps the rail component is next. I don't know. But this is something that has already sparked an exodus of Russians from Crimea. Now it's a 10-kilometer long lineup before the bridge to get out of town, get out of Dodge. We're obviously, as an ATACMS, would have to hit in the middle of the right side of the road, in the middle of the span of the two piers, collapsing just one section. It's remarkably accurate. So it would assume, one would then have to assume, or you could posit that they didn't want to blow up both. They wanted to make it accessible to an extent, and who knows how long that will be there. Maybe the rail is next. Right? We don't know, but can't say definitively. I have the psychological plane factors in my mind that's definitely a signal, a symbol. A little bit, but not too much. And they can also say it was a suicide bomber. That's what the Russians want to say. The Ukrainians are saying, oh, it's a special forces operation. Okay, well, maybe technically someone from the special forces pressed the button on the HIMARS for the ATACMS and ta-da, special forces operation. Who knows, really? But we do know why they're not saying it, right? They're not saying it. They don't want to give any excuse for escalation. The Russians obviously know. I mean, if they wanted to escalate, here's a perfect example: nuclear weapons, right? People are talking about nuclear. If he wanted to go to nuclear, he could have said, that's an ATACMS. I told you that's a red line. You are trying to attack Russia, Mother Russia, strategic defeat of Russia. Ooh, and I'm going to do something. They're chickening out of every single thing they know is the thing, which is a thing that Ukraine is doing. And it's something that the Russians said if they ever did, or if the Americans ever gave this type of item, that they would escalate this into like a war with the United States. Never happened, didn't happen, it's not going to happen. So, in a way, this debate about the ATACMS also proves another point that there is no escalation to nuclear war for Putin. He knows the risks. He doesn't gain. In fact, it probably would expedite his removal and his death and the destruction of the country he claims to love. So, I hope that helps, John.
Yeah, a little bit. Thanks. I mean, I agree with you. Actually, the discussion on escalation management earlier on was with Thomas was really, really interesting, and the point that he has climbed down whenever he's had the opportunity. I was just purely from a sort of a functional point of view when they obviously hit the rail infrastructure across on the mainland as well at the same time. It just surprised me that hadn't been done. I'm not trying to second guess the Ukrainian COC. They know what they're doing. Obviously, it was just a curiosity from my side. But anyway, cheers.
Yeah, no worries. I take it as that. I don't know the exact answer, but obviously, it's they wanted to keep some type of traffic available, and who knows? But I don't know why the rail. Maybe if they hit the rail, that it would thought it would do something to the roadway. I'm not sure. But at least with one roadway open, they can claim they haven't totally cut off Crimea. Maybe they want to ship stuff out on rail. I have no idea. But either way, it's. I think it's super. I think it's self-evident that it is deliberate. And that's all I can say about that. I don't know who's next, Wendy or Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Yehuda. I mean, to me, it's a form. It's really interesting from a layman's perspective to see that this is a kind of a form of maskirovka that the Ukrainians are performing on the Russians here. They've got them. They're leaving the Kremlin a midget of an opportunity, smidgen of an opportunity to claim that this could be a smoking accident every time they hit one of these targets. So, yeah, absolutely excellent to see. I think the next hand was Nick. Go ahead, sir.
I actually initially put my hand up just to make the comment regarding the pickles that one should definitely avoid trying to shoot down a Russian missile with a Swedish pickled surströmming herring, as that would violate several chemical weapons conventions. Just on the bridge, though, I would say, first of all, GPS is not infallible. The missile will land where you told it, where it currently thinks the point is that you told it to go to. And unless they've actually had somebody on the bridge taking a waypoint, they may be relying on map data, which could be a little bit off. The other possibility, I think Yehuda almost vaguely mentioned it right at the end there, is they may have decided that if they're only going to fire one missile, that there is a better chance that the damage to the road will hurt the railway rather than the other way around. And now I think they probably got lucky with hitting a train, but clearly, all of that flaming asphalt leaping up didn't exactly, help the job of whoever it is who gets to sweep the railway. So that might have been another way around. Maybe they tossed a coin and said, let's be enigmatic about it. If they'd really wanted to destroy it, I would have thought they would have used 3 or 4 missiles, but then maybe they're being cagey about what they've got, because again, if there were 3 or 4 separate explosions, that would make it even harder for Putin to claim that it was a smoking accident. So I think a lot of things go into this. And once again, when people emerge and tell us what the reasoning behind it was, I'd love to reconvene the space about a year after the war ends, just so we can sit and go through the memoirs and go, oh, okay, yeah, I remember Yehuda saying that was a possibility, or maybe even Nick, who knows?
Who knows? But I will say about the first one, about the GPS not being quote unquote perfect. The coordinates are 100% perfect, Nick, and there's a very simple way that you can determine that. So you have a cell phone, right, Nick? Everyone has a cell phone. Okay. So signal communications, anyone who is in that world, and that's the Americans who can obviously are listening in probably on everything that's being said on Russian telecom. And if they can do that, it means they can also glean your cell phone's data. In fact, I suspect, Nick, that every human being, at least one human being in each car or truck, that has traversed that bridge for the last 8 months has had their phone on, whether they're listening to MriyaReport on their Twitter account or they're listening to Solovyov and his silliness on the radio. They're transmitting a signal. Their phone has their GPS coordinates firmly established in it. And if they were worried about one phone not being so good, they could then find, do an average of the thousands of phones that are traveling across that bridge, and they would get you the identical exact coordinate of where you'd want to be. However, in addition to that, satellite capabilities of the United States of America, probably the best in the world. They could probably find the GPS of a penny on my head if I was sitting on a chair in the middle of Toronto. So not even remotely worried about that.
Well, okay, if you're familiar with the game of geocaching, I've published about 85,000 geocaches, so I've seen pretty well all the ways that GPS can manage to go wrong locally. So that was just, I don't think it was that. I don't think it was that, but
Right.
GPS.
I'm not sure what that means. You posted about that. I'm letting you know though that the satellite technology they can, and not only that, they can send someone driving across with a very fine-tuned device that's specifically certain types of GPS equipment. What I'm trying to say is that's not the issue. There's a greater chance of a technical failure in the rocket versus that. So that's not.
But that's also using true. But that's also using GPS on the day. An interesting fact that based on that incidentally is that in most of Europe now, if you make an emergency call to the 112 number and you have a reasonably modern smartphone, the emergency services can see your GPS coordinates directly from the phone. The phone manufacturers have put in code to allow that to be transmitted along with the 112 call. I don't know if that's available in North America yet, but in most of Europe now, your 112 call, you don't have to worry about going, hold on, let me see if I can get a waypoint. The 112 operator can see your location now.
Yeah, that's pretty. I thought that was standard worldwide now, but either way, my point is that so they can get that the rocket, the missile hitting where it hit, very very common sense why it hit where it did, and well, at least I think it makes sense. I think they wanted to leave one side of the bridge open, and it's also a very strong statement to the Russians to demonstrate Ukraine's effectiveness and their potency, right? So why the rail bridge? Don't know. It's a good question.
Let's see where they hit I would bet money they will hit it again within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I have no idea when, but I do suspect that if this war is still on in a couple of weeks or whenever, it will be hit again. Definitely agree with you on that.
Okay, got a few speaker requests at the moment, so please don't be offended if I cycle you down. It's not personal. We're a free speech space, which is giving everyone the chance to speak. With that, we'll go to Anne Frank.
Thank you, Ben. Or thank you, Wendy. First, the theory about why they hit the road and not the railway bridge itself. In the duration of this conflict, we have seen a trend of the Ukrainians, tiptoeing the line each time. When the Russians say this is a red line, if you cross this line, we will, devastate you with nukes and all that. And by demonstrating to the Russians that we have the capability to do this, next time we can hit the railway line. So it's maybe a way of escalating almost, pushing one step further at a time. I also have a question for Jehuda. Well, very great to finally have him here and finally get to speak to him after listening to him for such a long time. Looking at a topographic map of Luhansk and the advance in the east, I get a bit not nervous, but I see the flat terrain, and I read about the lack of us sending armored vehicles to Ukraine. what do you think is the right way for the Ukrainians pushing forward regarding that? To me, it seems like the Russians have started to finally use the terrain to their advantage when defending. Thank you.
Sorry, can you say what region again? Luhansk?
Yeah, Luhansk. Yeah, cheers.
Just give me 1 second. 1 second.
Of course.
I was just buying eggs, and I was using the automated machine. I didn't want to have you hear everything. Okay, so the yeah, no. So I don't think this is going to delay because the Russians are using the terrain to their advantage. I think this is completely an operational pause for the Ukrainian. Consolidate a lot of. It's actually huge. Times wider frontage now. So I suspect that there's a lot of preparation going on the Ukrainian side to make sure they're able to advance in an efficient and effective manner. Initially, we're breaking out from the Balaklia area there, and it's a very narrow frontage, 50 kilometers. Now they have 500 kilometers at least. If you were to look at it, it's going to be like a quarter of the circumference of a circle, right? Going from the inside of that circle going out. So there's a lot more. There are a lot more moving parts in that picture. I don't think it's because the Russians are good at defending something right now. In fact, their positions are a little further.
Yehuda, I think we just lost you there. You're breaking up quite a bit. It may have been. Yeah, we just lost Yehuda.
I don't know if I cut off because I switched from Wi-Fi.
Just a little bit there. We're back now. Give us a mic check, Yehuda. I'm sure he'll be back with us in a moment. In the meantime, if you'd like to retweet the space, please do. It's in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you'd like to make a comment or a question on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, please request the mic button.
Wendy, do you think it's too early to threaten our audience with some economic talk? Or
that might be a little bit like a jar of pickles on the head, Ben, but
oh yeah, but that's why I'm proposing a threat. Like if you don't come up with questions and subjects to debate, we will start talking about economics.
Well, I think the topic of the Kerch Strait Bridge, it hasn't quite had the pin put in it that it deserves. Oh, Yehuda's coming up now. We'll just give him a moment. And he's back. Mic check, Yehuda.
Yeah, I got cut off earlier, so I don't know if what I said went through or not.
Not really. You might need to repeat it.
I was just saying that the battle space has gotten larger, and they have to shake out and prepare, consolidate, get the lines up, and they have to obviously have more forces up there to take that area. So I don't think the slowdown or the pause or the tempo slowing down is a result of the Russians being better at fighting or using the terrain to their advantage. I think it's simply a function of Ukrainians not ready to attack again, and that's why we're not seeing movement there yet. I think I equated it to the center of a circle to a quarter of the circumference of a circle is now the front, as opposed to where they were in a much smaller area umbilically. Yeah. And Frank.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not that they maybe have gotten better at fighting, but that the terrain is more to their advantage. It's like, as you said, the front has widened, the terrain is more open. Should like I'm of the opinion that like the Ukrainians should take the time they need. You know, their main resources are their guys, and they should not be wasting that when they don't have to. So, is there? Should we be agitating for more armored vehicles, giving the Ukrainians the possibility of, you know, sheltering their guys when pushing forward? Kind of a layman's question, but anyway, thank you.
Yeah, no. I mean, again, what's open terrain works both ways. So it'll also be harder for the Russians to create defenses, perhaps, right? I mean, unless they're dug in and they're doing proper defenses, but we've seen that they're not very good at that, and they haven't really done that on the fly very well whatsoever. So even if they have, you know, a few weeks to do so, they've done horrible things in months at a time. So I'm not so impressed by their ability to do anything like that. Doesn't mean that they can't learn, but I suspect that this is mostly the Ukrainians, you know, properly shaking out, getting prepared for the next counteroffensive. That's my take on it.
Thank you, sir. Cheers.
And just so you know, the terrain in Kherson is even more open going down, and they took a huge chunk of it in a couple of days, right? So it works both ways.
Abdullah, welcome.
Thank you, Wendy. Putin today he accused Ukraine of terrorism. What a douchebag! But if I may, I would like to comment on what your earlier guest touched upon. I think his name was Thomas, regarding the state of the German military. It was really disheartening. I knew the German military was not in good shape, but I didn't realize it was in shambles, as Thomas described. It's no wonder when Brussels and the EU proposed EU defense union that would have challenged NATO was shut down by NATO's eastern flank countries, and also the UK before they left the European Union. No wonder why they were not excited about the prospect of leaving their fate with EU with the EU. They realized that I think if they were to rely on the EU for their defense, the strongest power in the EU can't even last for 3 minutes as in battle, as Thomas quipped earlier. In addition to that, I think you can just say goodbye, I think, to any EU defense union anytime soon. On the continent, I think their security will live and die by NATO's security apparatus. And I would like my fellow listeners also who live in the EU to always advocate and fight for making NATO stronger, and not what the French president, I think Macron, said about just 2 years ago, I think, that NATO was brain dead. You know, now we know that what he said was just nonsense. And also, speaking of the German government, the state of their military should be a scandal, really. It should be something that the German people should just rise up and fix it immediately. The German government, they need to realize that in order to enjoy their economic status going forward, they must have a strong military to defend it if the need arises, and not rely on the American security umbrella for their protection every time. I know we laughed at Trump, and I was one of them who laughed at him when he attacked the state of the German military and their reliance on Russian gas. But many people are not laughing now. Also, I don't think the American people will tolerate if the strongest economy in Europe is not doing its part in pulling its own weight when it comes to NATO's military strength going forward. As you know, NATO faces a lot of threats arising from the Indo-Pacific. Lastly, what do you call? I wish Colonel Spencer was here so he could comment on what he thinks about the Crimea bridge situation. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Abdullah.
Actually, sorry, Wendy. Just Colonel Spencer did comment on his page about the bridge, and his main thinking, as usual, was more forward-looking than most of us, and he was saying that he was expecting other operations to be conducted against the bridge. He did not mention whether he thought that the current operation had been led by a truck, a car, a motorbike, or indeed a tricycle. But he did mention that he was fully expecting the same type of operation to be conducted again in a very short time.
Thank you, Ben, for that. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that was a good point, Abdullah, and thank you, Ben. It was a good point, Abdullah. I mean, Thomas Turner was absolutely appropriately scathing of the German government's contribution so far towards Ukraine during its existential year, because gosh, that was 3 hours, which seemed like condensed into 10 minutes for me. I don't know about you, but there was so much quality information there. It was just great to have him on the show. Yeah, pleased to enjoy that. Next person with a hand up is Brad. Welcome back.
Hey, so I've got a quick weather-related question in Ukraine. Given kind of the how Ukrainian forces are positioned right now and everything that they've accomplished, and we're in fall and weather's getting a little tricky. Are there any areas that within Ukraine that get muddier faster, where based upon where Ukraine is at right now in their counteroffensives, they may find that they need to push harder in that area because it's going to be a problem from a weather standpoint? In other words, are there any weather constraints that are like, hey, we've got to get this done in the north quick, otherwise we're going to be stuck, but we've got a little bit more leeway, things are going to be warmer in the south and drier down there? But do you see what I'm saying? Are there any constraints like that, or is weather relatively uniform across Ukraine and it's just going to suck for a while regardless of where you're at?
It's a good question, Brad. We've had a number of speakers from Ukraine recently, which have noted that, yeah, of course, the seasons are changing, and the side which is, best equipped for that is naturally going to be at an advantageous position, and this is why international solidarity to Ukraine cannot really stay the same. It needs to increase. It's it's really heartening to see news like we have done over the last 48 hours, but the reality is, as we all know, that the liberation of Ukraine is being bled for on its fields. But we've seen lots of good news, and one of those people who often gives us good news, and we're really lucky to have on the space, is our good friend Konstantin, who's coming up now, who I think has made it through the Twitter sphere.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Good to see you, Konstantin. Loud and clear.
I wanted to address the weather. So the weather in Ukraine is different from south and north. It's a bit better in the south. Well, obviously but it's still pretty cold. but there is in the south there is a bit less mud, for example, in Kherson, but in general it's about, you know, the problems stay the same. I listened to a podcast recently, and it reminded me actually when I was serving in 2015. Unfortunately, we had Russian operation that was successful. They stole Debaltseve from us. It was the operation happened in January, and it was a pretty big chunk of land, and it was performed in the winter. So I would suggest that while the weather is, you know, is not comforting, the military operations are still possible. I would suggest that the pace of them would be different rather than exclusive, if that makes sense.
I'm sorry, could you say that last bit again? I missed it.
So I would say that weather in Ukraine would slow down the pace of any operation that is happening. Either it's assault operations, but it does not mean that there will be no operation. It will not, you know, just exclude chances of them happening. That's my take on it, because we did perform operations in the winter. Russians did perform operations in the winter as well in Ukraine. So I don't expect, you know, this to be complete stalemate without anything happening. But the pace, instead of the pace of the operation, will be slower, because it's obviously you need more fuel. The soldiers are getting tired much faster, and it's much harder to dig in new positions. So my take on this, it's probably going to impact the pace of the operation.
Is there a difference between the fall and the spring in terms of the level of mud? I'm imagining spring might be worse, right?
Yeah, it's usually worse. It depends, you know. Right now, the seasons are somewhat unstable all around the world, not only in Ukraine, but in general, you're right. The spring is a bit worse because we have if the winter was snowy, because you would have if the winter was snowy and cold, because you would have entire like a snow cover melting in the spring, which results into more how to say that, more wet muddy weather, but still, you know, we get rains in the end of the September. Was actually September itself was, for example, really rainy in the northeast. So the conditions are pretty muddy as well already. um, and if fall is going to be rainy as well, there will be no real difference between spring and fall. So but once again, weather, you know, it's not something you can I would say weather is not something you can predict, but that's not true. But you know, completely know how the season is gonna how entire fall season, winter season, and spring is going to be, I don't think it's really possible. So we can only, you know, take historical data, which is well, I don't know, it's fortunate or not fortunate, but lately it was not, you know, it was not stable as well. So it's pretty hard exactly to predict, but I would suggest that spring is more muddier on average.
Got it. Thanks.
Konstantin, given the change in seasons, your friends on the ground, your allies there, could you identify for us here what support they would like to see delivered as soon as possible?
Do you mean like support in terms of, you know, winter clothing, or just in general everything?
Yes, winter clothing and anything else that enables them to fight this war and make their situation better.
I would, there is not one single thing that can change absolutely everything. But good base layer and sleeping bags, I always consider to be key here. And I've spoken with the guys, if from things that are not expensive and that can be provided. And usually not government does not provide those in good quantities. So base layer, I would say, and sleeping bags, and maybe something like good gloves, because those are also not provided, not usually provided by the government, and they are pretty hard to buy of the good quality ones. So as for this is if we're talking about some cheap stuff that everyone can do and help Ukraine with. If we're talking about other things, there is an open question right now of heating, how to heat the trench. Like our military books, we heat trenches with the special stove. That is basically wooden stove. The fuel is wood, and with so many troops right now mobilized, when we're talking about like 1 million people, those firewood is a problem. I really don't know how we're gonna solve it. I hope there is a plan for that, but that would, I'm quite sure it is going to be a problem. But once again, I don't see fast and easy solution for that. There are many people who speak, okay, let's not use stoves because thermal drones will see, etc. But that's not the reality, because if you live in the trench with minus 20 degrees, you have to keep the to stay warm somehow. You will not, there are no other way, no other real ways other than burning fuel to keep the trench going. So I would say that some solutions for that would be really great. But I've spoken with a couple of people, who went through February, and none, have some kind of good solution that they would say, okay, we need this, and it's gonna be a game changer for us in terms of heating the trenches.
Thank you, Konstantin. Brad.
Yeah, another question for Konstantin, a non-war related question. If Ukraine were not at war currently, if you didn't have horrible neighbors to the east, it's fall right now, leaves are changing colors. If you had a weekend holiday, where would be the prettiest place to go in Ukraine this weekend?
I would go to Carpathian Mountains. That's for me. I love mountains. It would be my 100% choice for hiking. There are very multiple great routes there. It's a beautiful forest, beautiful nature. That's where I would go.
Any specific towns?
Well, I don't think I can name specific, but we usually go to Zakarpatsky region, and and there you can just it's like a Klondike of beautiful beautiful places to go. So I will not anything around Bukovel is really great, but that's like becoming a really mainstream. Lots of people going there. Well, I don't know about right now, but when I was there, other, I don't think I will name concrete stuff right now. Sorry.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Konstantin. Thank you, Brad. Abdullah.
Hey, thanks again. I wanted to ask Konstantin. I don't know if you can comment on this, but I was wondering on the Crimean Peninsula weather conditions during this time of the year, and the conditions on the Kerch Strait. As you probably know, the Russians are planning to use ferries to transfer goods, and as large trucks and semis are not being allowed into the open lane on the bridge. Will it be something that would be possible during winter weather conditions for ferries to go through the strait?
So I will. I don't think I'm competent enough to talk about the ferries in the Kerch Strait. But the weather, there is like a strong current as far as I remember, and the sea is not as stormy. But there are not that many ferries that they simply have. I don't think they have enough ferries to facilitate this. But once again, I honestly think that they will in a month or less they will fix the bridge unless we strike it again. So that's my take on it. I don't know what's going to really happen. I'm not an expert on that. But if you ask whether in Crimea, I've been in Crimea at winter. It's much warmer than in the rest of the Ukraine. Specifically on for example, southern coast. That's Yalta, Lushta, Koktebel. That's where I went usually. But I was once also in Yevpatoria. And it was the conditions were really windy. That's what I remember. It was always windy. The weather itself was a bit temperature was higher than on the land-based Ukraine, but it was because of the wind it was pretty miserable. It felt not really comfortable, and in the winter like everyone leaves Crimea. There aren't many, so the tourist season is. Oh, I think the tourist season is over there for quite some time now, but still. So they are, the supply. You need less supplies for that as well. So it kind of plays on their hands, on Russian hands. I would say, but still, that's. That's what I think. I hope I answered your question without rambling too much.
Yes, yeah, perfect. Thanks, Konstantin.
Yeah, I think our resident whiskey expert, did I say whiskey? I meant all things nautical, Gunny, who was, it was just the guy that predicted the Moskva on this space a few months back. He'll be able to give us quite a comprehensive answer on things like wave heights and the sustainability of maintaining a ferry crossing across the Kerch Strait.
But that we did not have. There was no bridge before, and ferries definitely traveled in Kerch. But what I remember is that there were like if you have a storm, then ferries are not coming, and storms were not. I don't think they were very common. It's like I have flashbacks right now trying to remember because in the news we would have this. But once again, I don't think I will have too much information because back then, there was no Crimea was not Russia did not annex it, did not steal the land, and it was a bit less communication or less need for communication with Russia. So I hope that by cutting the bridge, it's gonna go back to what it was once again, and it's gonna be a bit they're gonna be cut off from Russia, and it's gonna hurt, it cause problems for supplying specifically their military, because as you know they have a lot of military bases in Crimea, and there's a lot of traffic that goes through there into southern Ukraine, into Kherson specifically.
Thank you, Konstantin. Thank you, Abdullah, for your great question as well. You're listening to the Mirror Report. We're a 24/7 space dedicated to supporting Ukraine, and it's not just its year of need, but it's a year of existential need. Of course, it was invaded back in 2014, and we're really lucky to be joined by Konstantin, who has been working very closely with Ukraine's warriors on the ground, and we're very lucky to have him on the space. If you'd like to request the mic and ask a question or make a comment on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, please do request the mic button by pressing it in the bottom left-hand corner. or do retweet the space, send us a quote tweet, and tell us what you think. We've been really lucky today to be joined by the wonderful Thomas Tyner, who spent 3 hours giving us an absolutely comprehensive breakdown of the Kerch Bridge and the event that happened there yesterday, which it's dominated the discourse, and rightly so, because what's come over that bridge for many months now, and for many years, of course, because it wasn't just on the 24th of February this year that military vehicles started flowing over that bridge. But what has been coming over that bridge on a consistent basis has been used to murder the people of Ukraine, and so seeing its partial destruction is good news. Konstantin.
So I missed most of the conversations with the most of the discussion with Thomas, and I was wondering. So his conclusion for this, his personal take and analysis, is that it was the missile strike, like ATACMS, right?
Yes, he was, and it's also he also explored many kind of wider results of the strike, Konstantin. I mean, one thing that struck me, for example, was the fact that this has put the Kremlin in the position of having to continually lie to its people about what happened where. So he mentions the Saki airfield strike, and as we know, a magician never repeats the same trick twice. And it just struck me that Ukraine is doing this in a very calculated way, and in a way which keeps the Kremlin in that headlock which it's currently in. But yeah, that would be an affirmative to your question, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would comment on that as well. I think that Russia, they have put themselves in this line circle. I would say narrative circle, like line circus, I would say, where they have to amplify their lie each time something happens. Because, first they were saying that they have the greatest military in the world, and now it turned out, that their greatest military in the world is getting their asses kicked by the country 4 times less population, and 15 times less military budget, and the one who was not bragging. So how they did it, what they have to do now is they have to lie even more. They say now they're fighting NATO instead of Ukraine, and it's all over Russian media. And another funny part that because they started lying about that, their soldiers now thinking they're fighting NATO, and they are afraid of fighting NATO, and their morale is much lower now because they know that NATO possesses, technologies like HIMARS, technologies like, much more sophisticated, much more capable than Russians do. And now they all are afraid of that, and it strikes their morale pretty badly. And they really don't have, a solution. They cannot stop lying that they're fighting NATO, and because it's gonna hurt entire image of Russian military and strong Putin. But at the same time, I heard lying about NATO hurts the morale of their soldiers, and it's like dead loop for them, and they cannot break out of it.
Yes, indeed. Well said, Konstantin. The Gordian knot that Ukraine has put the Kremlin in here is quite extraordinary. It's got its, as Thomas Tyner was explaining earlier, it's got itself in a position, the Kremlin, where it has to lie every single time Ukraine makes one of these strategic strikes, and it has no other option but to lie, because the other option is to admit failure. And we all know, we can all see, the entire world is observing failure by the Kremlin, and the inspirational resistance of Ukraine and its warriors and its people against this invasion. So yeah, it's quite an extraordinary thing. I would describe it as a Gordian knot, one that is inescapable for the Kremlin, and it has only one response to each of these calculated strikes, and that is just to create some absurd lie, which is a lie which is so absurd to the rest of us, but just about sellable to a diminishing number of the Russian population. So, you know, this time it was the lie they're selling is it's some kind of, I don't know, Muslim suicide bomber in a truck, you know, was timed with perhaps a boatload full of e-scooters going underneath the bridge. I don't know. The next time it will be something more absurd. But what Ukraine is consistently doing is keeping the Kremlin in this Gordian knot. So it's great to see. And with that, we'll go to Den John. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. And I have to push back again on the scooters. If it's an electrical vehicle, it's a Tesla. That I think that's that's established. Anyway, to what you said about this Gordian knot, I mean, another example, which I think is the most telling one, is after Putin had his celebration or ceremony to annex the new regions, and that they would be protected with everything within Russia's might. At the same time, Ukraine was actually liberating big areas, and the way to walk it back was to say that they haven't set the borders yet. They're working on that. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I don't know if Konstantin, can you hear? I heard you were in the car.
Yeah, loud and clear, Den John.
No, I'm trying to see if Konstantin can still hear, because I just want to say.
Still here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just one thing that Thomas said about this strike on the Kerch bridge. One very telling proof that it was ATACMS is that he said there's only two missile types that hit the target almost vertically, and that's Gimlers and ATACMS. No other system that he's aware of, and this was a vertical hit.
Got it. Well, it's great to hear. Thank you for. Unfortunately, I missed the interview, and I'm sure it was great. I read his articles. You know, I think he does some in-depth analysis, and I don't agree on some stuff with him. But once again, he's an expert. I'm not here. I'm just I'm more an observer.
Can I say one more thing, Wendy, just to fill in?
Please.
Yeah. Another thing that he explained was the difference between the artillery used by Russia and Ukraine. And basically, the Russian artillery is like, it's 60, 70, 80 years old. And basically, the way he explained it was that to operate the Russian artillery is like navigating with a sextant, a compass, and a watch. And it's done by drunken sailors. And the Western artillery is like using a hand of the GPS for navigation. So yeah, a lot of good. You should have been there. It was a really, really good session.
Yeah, unfortunately, but I would argue is that Soviet artillery is not perfect, of course, but it's still a gun if the barrel is serviced and is in a mint condition, it can be pretty accurate. I worked with Soviet artillery. I did not work with any Western artillery, and I know that it was successful, and we managed, to hit the targets. And a lot of it depends on the crew operating it. But of course, with Western artillery, it has a lot of pluses, specifically the precision. But once again, the precision does not mean that Yasin howitzer, for example, lands first round 1 kilometer away. it's it's less precise. It lands the round with like 20-meter less accuracy than M777. It's not, the difference is not tenfold. Just so people understand that. And also so while we can praise a lot Western piece of military equipment, I can tell you that Soviet equipment has its own advantages, and one of them is the rate of fire. You can fire 9 rounds a minute with Msta B, for example, and it will keep going. With M777s, the numbers like that are just not doable. So just it's there is a precision, there is rate of fire, there are a lot of things that have to be taken into consideration when you discussing the artillery. And I would suggest that Western artillery is still superior, but it's not like we're talking like let's not say that it's bow and arrows against Excalibur missiles. It's not like that. And I know people in the West like to hear that, and but it just it's not like that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Denchon. I think one of the many advantages we got today was that some of the analysis that we may have seen over the last 24, 48 hours has involved the images that have come from this bridge, which, it only takes a layman to see that these images are not of the highest quality, and they are very unlikely to capture an object moving at the speed that Mr. Thiner suggested this afternoon, or whichever time zone you're in. It was afternoon for me. So a lot of analysis has been written. A lot of words have been put into these potato cam images, which we also should note come from the side that's invading Ukraine here. So a lot's been written about what a particular truck was doing on the bridge at the moment of the explosion. What we heard this afternoon was a comprehensive, calm, evidence-based approach and analysis to the event of the Kerch Bridge yesterday. And with that, we'll go to Pauli. Welcome.
All right. Good evening, Wendy. Thank you for great moderating this evening. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Thank you, Pauli.
All right. Yeah. So I will go to back to the winter theme a bit. I will not be surprised if in the Eastern Front, where the winter can be quite cold, I think it can be -20, -30, -40. I will not be surprised if this winter Ukraine forces will execute nighttime operations, and they will utilize the frosty and the icy fields with tanks, preferably with Leopard tanks during the December, January time. I think, well, constantly it would be nice to hear your comments, but what do you think? What's the capability currently? In 2014, Ukraine didn't have the equipment, did not have similar schooling, and they didn't have the masses. And of course, today, Ukraine also has the high-end satellites. They can use the ISI satellites, which actually you can have infrared satellite images through clouds during nighttime, and then you can, of course, utilize HIMARS. So it would be really interesting to hear Konstantin's comments, what he expects the Eastern Front to look like, the Luhansk and Donetsk regions during the midwinter, like December, January time. Thank you.
Pauli, could I perhaps ask you just to narrow down your question? Maybe it's
Yeah.
probably just me.
Yeah, yeah, it was a lengthy introduction, a lengthy question, but like Constantine, how do you see the Eastern Front during the winter time? How do you see it going with the current equipment during December, January?
Is that a question to me? Sorry.
Yes, yes.
So you're asking how do I see Eastern Front in Luhansk and Donetsk in December, January, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I give you usually most moderate, estimations. So I don't think there's going to be too much action over there. I do think that Ukraine is going to be able to push through to Starobilsk before January and December, and I think pretty much it's going to stop at that point. Because right now our force is not a secret to anyone. There is a certain amount of tiredness among the troops because you cannot keep advancing so much and have the combat everyday combat for so long time. You need to stop. You need to rotate. There is psychological part in it. There is physical part in it and logistical part in it. So I think that around that time, Ukraine will probably take an operational pause unless there is like a huge something that I'm not taking into the account. Once again, that's my take on it. I've been mistaken multiple times, and this may as well be another mistake. But that's how I see it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pauli. Yeah, it's a logical question. Winter brings on, as you say, a difference in cloud cover, and it, from the layman's perspective, a difference in conditions and in the type of conditions that will be faced whilst Ukraine liberates its country. He really went into detail on a range of topics today, Mr. Thiner. Pauli, did you manage to listen to the interview at all?
Yeah, I think I got like half of it, if I'm correct. It was a great interview. Really like the how to say the it was vivid, so to say. really nice explanations and how to say really nice adjectives. I really enjoyed the interview and the details. They really it was really nice.
Did he mention anything about what are the chances of successful second attack like this? Because if it was ATACMS or any other missile system, there is like you can shoot once again. Did he talk about anything like that?
Yeah, he touched upon it, Constantine. And we also had Chuck Pfarrer on the evening before, and he gave the opinion that he would hit it again, but kind of give a gap of 72 hours to wear down the what's supposed to be the anti-aircraft defense around the Kerch Strait Bridge. I mean, they call themselves an anti-aircraft defense. From where I'm sitting, it's probably just a bunch of people on e-scooters. But yeah, it was levity aside. It was definitely he definitely thought it was conceivable that it could be hit again. Whether it is or isn't, we'll have to see. Abdullah, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I was just going to ask about the Kherson offensive. If the Russian defense were to collapse first, and God, do I want that to happen soon? Does anyone foresee the possibility of liberating Crimea before liberating the rest, like Donetsk and Luhansk? Thanks.
Well, that's certainly what all of Ukraine's allies hope for, Abdullah. We've just seen in the last hour that a member of the Kherson Regional Council claims that the Russians have destroyed the bridge over the Sofia-Viska Balka near the village of Milov, which I know a lot of people are pronouncing my love, but it's Konstantin may have to correct me on this pronunciation. Actually, it's Milove. Is that right, Konstantin?
Yeah, Milova.
Milova. Thanks. So to me, this, just from the layman's perspective, this would be indicative of an army on the retreat, blowing a bridge, and which it doesn't intend to use for an advance, and intends to stop an advancing, liberating force in this case. So if you do manage to have a map in front of you, Milove does it has this this kind of peninsula kind of just around it, which you know, it's right next to the Dnieper, and it's on the way to Novokakova, so it's a fairly strategic location. But yeah, there has certainly been progress on that front. And with that, we'll go to Museum. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm very sorry that I missed Thomas Tyner's talk. I'm sure that would have been very interesting, and I look forward to hearing it on Spotify. But one thing I'm not hearing much talk about, which I think is probably more significant than we're giving it credit for, is the likely significance of the engineering, military intelligence aspects of this. You know, and I would expect that to include espionage to get hold of plans and construction details, and likely satellite and other surveillance monitoring of it during construction. Because, you know, talking with, briefly with a bridge engineering colleague this morning, and certainly it was my own opinion, coming from, living in a country that's seismically challenged, making sure bridges stay up is a big thing in New Zealand. And a properly designed bridge in that location shouldn't have gone down as easily, we feel. So very cleverly done, but I'm just interested that I think that's probably more significant than it's been given credit for. I think the Ukrainians have been very clever generally in their fighting, in targeting weaknesses. They've clearly done so here, done it very cleverly. And yeah, you would expect that they're going to hit it again. I mean, looking at that railway bridge, that fire was right over a pier. Well, there's likely a connection there. There's certainly in there. So that would be a good place to go, given that it's been subject to high temperature. But I'm just curious, did Thomas Tyner touch on that aspect of things?
Yes, he did. Can I just get your name right, sir? Is it Museum?
Yeah, that's right. It just rose out. My first name is David. There were just too many Davids to distinguish between people, so it seemed easier to do that. And one of my grandsons in the UK has problems with New Zealand. He thought we lived in a museum, so it was easier to just go for museum as a handle.
That's easy for me. It's homophonically the same as museum, so it's yeah, that's good for me. Yes, he did touch on this. Evidently the bridge itself is mostly made of steel. That steel has lost. He described a lot of its ability to support weight, and it's going. It's going to need replacing. Now, we've had people on this space. We've been lucky to have so many really quality speakers on this space in the last 24 hours who can speak about this in much better detail than I can. People like David Brookfield, for example, dry fly as well. Yeah, I can certainly tell you that what's been analysed on this space over the last 24 hours, what's been comprehensively discussed in the discourse, has been the fact that the fire on the rail bridge over the Kerch Strait it's hugely significant.
Oh yes, I mean they're absolutely right. I mean I worked on the railway for about 6 or 7 years, the civil engineers for London Underground, and yeah, they're definitely going to have to introduce massive speed and load restrictions. They'll be able to keep it going, I would expect, but it's
Mic check, sir. Mic check, museum.
Yes, no, sorry. Yes, I was just saying I worked for London Underground civil engineers for about 6 or 7 years, and yeah, as an expedient, they'll introduce speed restrictions and load restrictions, but at best, but it's not going to be good for them.
Just before we go on, I'd like to acknowledge up to the speakers panel, firefighter UA, Firefighter's Life, who's been on here before. I think at times when I've been off, so it's nice to speak to you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hello to everybody. I just didn't have time at the daytime. I can't remember. Some of you just invited me to join the room, but I couldn't have enough time because I tried to teach my drivers to use new fire trucks, which bought for us for Poland Foundation Sepamaha. So we just finished it, but it was very interesting and funny. And he just wanted me to join your room to, for something to probably say my opinion about the Crimea breach and everything like that. So I don't know, where should I start?
Well, your knowledge is greatly appreciated here, sir.
Actually, Enda asked you to come over, and she's coming up right now. So if you give her just a second, and museum dropped. I was hoping that you could have a conversation with him. As an engineer, he knows quite a few things. Enda, you should be in bed, considering your shift is starting in like 2 hours. But in the meantime, maybe you can take it away.
4 hours, but yeah, I was so excited. Hello and good evening.
Yeah, good evening. So if you don't mind, I just wanna start a little bit from the how I would like to say Adam and Eve. This guy museum for me, it sounds like new Izum. So I would definitely remember him for the rest of my life. Like museum, new Izum. Anyway, when I just arrived to Ukraine from Poland, my firefighters told me that like almost 3 days ago, right now it will be 3 days ago, they went to the fire which been caused by this Iraq or Iran kamikaze drone, which hit the oil stock for oil, not far away from my station. But it was area for 41st station of Kharkiv, and my guys have been helping there, and also there was our general civil defense here in Ukraine, in Kharkiv, not in Ukraine, Kharkiv. So our General Volovuyev was there. Also, a lot of high chiefs also been operating there, and there was another kamikaze drone who was trying to. No, there was. No, it's just story. What was when I was out. So while they've been extinguishing that fire, there was another air alarm. And our main department told by radio stations that everybody should go undercover and find the shelter because there is a possible for another strike, and it was another drone. And my guys told me like, hey, we just lie down on the floor, and then we are hearing this very like huge sound of something flying like louder and louder, and then general gave a command, just run, because probably he just the sounds was like it's wanna hit the ground where they're operating right now when they're working by extinguishing that. and they almost finished extinguishing this oil stock. And the drone hit just probably like 50-80 meters from them, and it missed it hits the 11 building, like this is like 5-floor building for the 11 apartments, and they start to extinguish fire there on the roof like immediately. But as I said, it was fucking scary. Oh, sorry, it was scary as hell. And like that was like little story. And that's also interesting. When I just came back here in Kharkiv, just my first night, it wasn't like my day for work. I still have like kind of work trip day, and I just hear this very big four blasts and the heat somewhere nearby, and I already okay, let's go. Probably I need to take out all my fire gear again, fire clothes and everything, and we will go. But no, my fire station didn't go there, but it was probably only my and few more fire stations who didn't go to extinguish this fire caused by the heats in the city center. So anyway, I don't have like truly information because I didn't been here and didn't been there. But about the Crimea breach, what was my thoughts? Like, yes, no, it was very interesting news, and just I think our troops and Zaluzhny will take everything to use this possibility to counterattack even more, because this situation, not just my opinion, making not only civilians there, not only militaries in Crimea and just all Russian militaries, but also citizens of Crimea who also didn't want wasn't bothered about all this right now. Probably a lot of them just frightened and probably will trying to leave and escape the Crimea. I mean, that's ones who don't want to be in Ukraine. And like I remember the speech of our president, almost like first month of the war. I just remember his speech when somebody asked, why don't you just hit the bridge or something like that. He said, we will not hit the bridge because we don't want to some people who don't want to be with Ukraine in Crimea when the Crimea will come back to Ukraine. So we want them to have a possibility to leave Crimea, and just all people who want to be with Ukraine will just stay there. So, with just my opinion, probably right now, using this situation, our troops should really counterattack very fast, and just probably will they do it on the south direction from Kherson and from all those directions. They can really use this possibility to doing another effective counterattack. So that's just my opinions, my words.
Thank you. I wanted to ask your opinion on the damage that could be sustained by the bridge. As we all see, it was a really big fire. If you can give us a bit more details.
I just probably seen the same what what you all have been seeing. I don't know, like I also have seen another footage. I don't know, is it fake or is it not fake? Like when you see some rocket hits the bridge, but like it's kind of I know I cannot believe what I really cannot check, and just what I've seen is big damage. Also, train is burned, and probably train has some very this liquid which can cause fire very fast. Maybe some benzene, gasoline, I don't know, petrol. How do you call it? So some of these liquids. But I know the damage was really huge, and I know like somebody said it's terract by like some explosive, like 100 of the explosive was inside. But I know I'm not specialist in all this. I'm just firefighter, so cannot have like expert opinion about all that. So, and to be honest, like for me, it really doesn't matter who done this and what and why somebody done it. But the reason is it's very good for our militaries to make their counterattack to go forward. That's most important for me right now.
It's true. I see Konstantin has his hand up. Konstantin.
Yeah, hello, Roman. Just wanted
Hello.
to ask you, maybe as a firefighter, maybe you learned it. I'm not sure that it's part of what firefighters learn, but what is the temperature of burning diesel, like in the open like this?
Oh shit! It can be burning like even 20 hours, if it's not big hole, which from where this evaporating and burning. So this no, I mean not diesel burning, not benzene burning, burning the gases which evaporates. So like it's not big holes. It's kind of like if the some tank has a bigger hole, of course it will be burned much faster. Another one that has a less, much less, tiny hole, so it can burn even 20, 24, like in Shibelinki, like when we are extinguishing fire on the like oil stock. No, it's not for oil, also not for oil, just it's just for oil, for gasoline, for diesel, for petrol. So this reservoirs was burning for almost 5 days in a row. So it was also not possible to extinguish them. So we're just trying to defend another one, and when just also try to extinguish the little ones. I mean, it can burn very long without extinguishing.
I got it. Sorry, my question was a bit that's interesting info, and definitely thank you. But what do you think that температура горения дизельного топлива, temperature of when it's burning in the open like that?
No,
Can it
to be
damage?
honest,
Yeah, go ahead.
can it damage? I mean, the temperature okay on the open air. It's not really important. I mean, when train was burning, usually all this temperature, all this як то теплове випромінювання, heating rays will be just going up. They're not going like down to the structure. Yeah, of course it will be some heating, but the temperature will not be so hot. It could be like, I don't know, 500 degrees, 600 degrees, but not more. When it's just closed space, yeah, it can be just accumulate the heating, so the heat can be very huge. But not like in like there like open space train. So this
Yeah.
heating cannot damage concrete and like so much.
Yeah,
Usually,
this is exactly what I was thinking. You would address. What would you say can it damage? You're talking about concrete, but can it damage like metal parts inside? Like there is armatura. I don't know how to say it in English.
no, I don't to be honest, have not ever experienced in this in my life, and like train on the bridge and just can understand how can it work. But when we extinguishing like no concrete buildings, is yeah, there is some you just need to remember the formula. Like when I've been in university, there was like будівлі споруди, buildings and structures discipline, and on this discipline we are always we have been teaching how much different parts for building losing their capability of carrying the weight during the different fire, and usually it like 3 or 4 hours just inside building. I'm just explaining you the building with like normal buildings, normal apartment buildings or plants with the farms of metal with like big plates which making the floors of the buildings. So like 3 hours of very extreme burning. After 3 hours, the structure start to lose the capacity uh, of power of carrying the weights. So like 3 hours of this fire just starts losing the capacity, and then it goes like comparing how much heat, how much fire, how this
Got it.
is.
Thank you.
Mm, it's also comparing which materials been using in making these parts. I mean, in the USSR, we used to learn by the ghost and snips. Ghost and snip, I don't know how to translate, but it's like uh, government standard of making something. So it was the old one, but I know also like where the Crimean bridge was built like not so far away. So maybe they used another more powerful ingredients, more good ingredients to make it like more strong, because probably they try to make it as strong as possible. But also I'm pretty sure they didn't add some special ingredients which makes uh, fire resistance more, because it's like unreasonable to put more money on it, because when we go about so big project, so many kilometers of the bridge, so when it goes, should we add also like fire resistant ingredients? Probably not, while the bridge will be burning. But I don't know, like we need to ask Russians about it. So if you want to really understand like how it affects the bridge, how the fire was affect the bridge, we really need to understand uh, from what it has been made, how from which ingredients has been made all these parts.
But wouldn't this fire affect the railways?
Railways, yeah, I told heating waves, I mean heating rays. I know how to say теплове випромінювання. I don't know how to translate it more certain.
So under the train you have the metal railways.
Yeah. Railways,
which,
got it. Railways, got it. Sorry.
which were engulfed in the fire. So
Yes,
the fire was
they can be also like melted a bit, but I'm telling you, I just don't know this information. So we also just need to check out like what is the melting temperature for the railways. To be honest, I know I am not a Wikipedia. I cannot remember this, but you just give me a very interesting question to work on it just a little bit later, you know. But yeah, just you need to look about the railways. Okay, you need to also understand like it won't be a temperature like more than 1,000 degrees. It's just impossible. But once 1,100 degrees is just temperature. When the aluminium and manganese start to burn, it is impossible to extinguish by water. It's only possible to bury it in the sand or ground, like this, but not with the water. No, definitely impossible. Also not with the foam. So this wasn't a temperature like this, and this temperature not enough to melt the railways, as I can be definitely sure, because usually the railways is the metal ones, and for melting metal, like it should be much higher temperature, like in these scales. I mean, on the open space. They can be some kind of not deformation. It could be some deformation on them, but not definitely melting.
Agreed. When I said when I thought melting, I thought not completely like liquefying them,
Yeah.
but at making them unable to be
Soft.
used.
Of course,
Yes.
probably it could be. Probably they need to change all of it. It's like it will be very stupid of them if they will not change the railways under the burning train, because it's just also metal. Yeah, it can lose capability, and like about the metal memory. So when you will hit metal, it's always trying to come back to the form he was once. Like it's like the engineers should warn everybody that they need to change the all railways to use it again, because it's just if you're talking about safety. But I don't sure that Russia cares about safety. They can just try to use them. Okay, let's try one train. Okay, good one. Let's go the next one. Oh, the next one fall down. Okay, sorry, we need to change it. Maybe it will be like this. I don't know.
Thank you, Abdullah. I see you had your hands up.
Yes, thanks. And just a quick question for the firefighter. Thank you for all the great work you do. Yeah, if I may ask, and you don't have to respond if you don't want to, can you share with us the most challenging call you had to respond to so far in this war?
Oh
Thanks.
shit! I already told this. I already told it, man. Just I also been in Poland, and they always asking me the same question, and just in Poland, I've been just probably no, not crying, but just this stuff when the men talk about it, he don't want to talk for 5 times, and just everybody was crying, and the crew and team. There was a horrible fire when like probably the second week or the first week, can't quite remember, when we go to the Saltivka. It was Heroes of Labor, probably. If I will translate it, the name of the street, just literally it will be Heroes of the Labor. So it's just from the USSR name, but nothing wrong with it. So Heroes of Work or Heroes of Labor. So it was Hero of Truda 37, 37B, 37G, 37R, maybe. Can't remember all the addresses, but there was a 6 different apartments and the 6 different buildings on the 6 different floors, and I only had 3 fire trucks under my command, and also there was a people on the street, unconscious, dead, without body parts. There was a killed kids. There was a kids who been crying and screaming, "Mama, please stand up," or "Daddy, please stand up." It was fucking hell. And just I had only 3 trucks to operate, but usually we have 2 trucks to operate one apartment fire. That's all. So my decision was we just choose from these 6 apartments which was burning. 3 was almost definitely probably burn out whole apartment. So I decided to split the team on the fire trucks. So 3 fire trucks goes to the different fire apartment, and another guys which was split from these trucks started to help with me to the people we could help. We didn't have in those times. We didn't have a lot, but thankfully to my friends from the different countries, I already had tourniquets, already had first aid kits. So I also had a lot of the trainings for the first aid and for the tactical first aid. Just I know I'm kind of a little crazy person about all this, so I just also spent my own money to get this training. So I just operated. My guys told them like how to choose who will need to help, who don't need to help. No, I mean probably all militaries here and who all paramedics know what I'm talking about. You need to sort people. So that was fucking hard.
Yeah. Triage.
Yeah. Learning it in the fucking courses is one thing. When you just having this in real life, it's unbelievable.
Thank you, Roman, for sharing this. Just to be clear, if you don't feel like answering a question, you can always tell us you'd rather not. You don't
Hey man, we are
anything.
just. I know that's fine. I just telling you. Yeah, I don't like this question, but I'm pretty sure for people who is here who probably didn't hear this story before, I need to tell the story anytime if somebody will ask me about it, because that's very important so people will understand it. And also this Polish guy, Polish coordinator of this foundation also supported me after this question, always support me after each interview. Has Roma, you done a good job, because people in Poland also and on the whole world need to understand it. It's like, yeah, when I've been in Europe, yeah, it's very different feelings. It was my first trip, but yeah, people just living their normal lives and really like it and really appreciate it. And I also already told, like there was a big stuff like in media when there was a party in Kiev and people started, oh, militaries and like people in Kharkiv just suffering and they are dancing. But I know, like my opinion was definitely opposite, because I thought, hey, if we are in Kharkiv just working on it, like yeah, military is working, defending us, we are working, trying to defend it and extinguish and save people in these fires. So why people in Kiev or Lviv or other cities cannot live their normal life if our work can make them live this normal life? And when the militaries, when they go to rotations and can go to Lviv, to Kiev, to other cities, just to really to chill, to hang up, to have a fun. So I think it was good. I don't know like why this was so hype in this, but anyway, just my opinion. So also like Polish people and European people also just I can't say they don't care, they care, but that Polish foundation just told me that we need to all people understand it's important, it's real, it's happening, and oh, you need to I've been making a lot of attention there. So I've been wearing my uniform, and sometimes I've just been wearing my my big backpack with everything I need, like, and it looks interesting for people, so they just seen somebody from the war zone. Just for them it was affecting very much.
I'm sure you're excellent at PR. In the meantime, I do have a question for you. We had several experts talking to us, and most recently, today, we had Thomas Steiner, and they explained to us how probably European armies were not ready to fight the sort of war that the Ukrainian army is currently fighting. What would you say is the state of, if you know, of European firefighters? Would they be able to do something that, well, the things that you're doing, or are they not just not prepared?
Hey man, who was prepared for this? Nobody. We also been frightened for first 2 weeks. Just after we just kind of adjust to it, kind of used to it, but nobody was prepared. Of course, when I've been in each fire station in Poland, they asked me a lot of questions, asked how we done it, how to operate it. So when I've been given interview in the Poznan main department, so the five the press officer and the probably chief of the station was noting what I've been saying, because this question how I just split the team, and there was also another questions how it was on the different fires. So they just also been making notes. So after this we've been talking for 2 hours. They just wanted to have this experience. Of course I hope and they are hoping that it won't be on the in the any country in the future, because I hope we will just defeat this madness. We will just defeat this craziness, and it never will happen again in any part of the civilized world. But just in case, on the different reasons, it can be different catastrophes, it can be different occasions in each country, not only caused by war. But anyways, we've been talking for 2 hours from my each interview, but with the firefighters about it. So they just want to be prepared. Of course, if you just bring them here just with the stuff they used to know, with everything, they will be kind of in some shock for a week, for two maybe, but I don't know, like they also will adjust like everybody else. I mean, the fire, no, just what I know and what I met a lot of guys from different parts of the world. Like I've been working with Canadians, with Americans, with Australians. No, I mean, professional firefighter from the Germany, from no, not from Poland. It was Germany, Canada, Australia, and yeah, the United States. So all of them professionals, and all of them just really good guys, really good firefighters. So if it happened, I hope it's not, but if it happened, it will be the same like Ukrainian firefighters. Yeah, we just have experience, real experience. They not, but they always want to learn. They want to have at least not practical, but like theoretical knowledge what they can do. So like, and Americans, like, and all these guys are very professionals, very professional. So I think I finished, and I can't tell anything more. You know what? You see what you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And you want to take the
Um,
lead again?
no, just to go to the hands, but you can lead.
All right. So Victoria, welcome on board.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Roman, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always nice to hear from you. I have a question. I know you told me before that you may meet your family in Europe. I'm just wondering if you had a chance to see your wife and your beautiful daughter.
Oh, that was really amazing, because you need to just imagine how people in the airport see this situation. So for them, it was like, no, of course, I've been make some attention for them, but they didn't know who I'm waiting for, because this foundation also paid for their tickets, paid for us for the hotel. I also probably gained them. Oh, no, I don't know. No, they told me that usually they have like for 10 days not much money, as I've been there giving all this interview. So probably these trucks which they bought me for 2.3 million zloty is like it's almost 20 million hryvnia. I kind of repay this price by giving interview because they have much more donations after all of this, and they paid for my wife and daughter flight. They paid for the hotel, and when I met them in the airport, my daughter didn't know that I will be there. My wife did, and I asked the coordinator to make a video how my daughter will meet me, but his hands was shaking probably, and he just starts recording, and then he stops recording because probably his finger hit again this button. And my daughter first she say like Papa, and then she come to me and she say Papa, and she's crying and I'm crying, like probably for a minute. I just been holding her on my hands and just crying just with her, and my wife didn't come to me. It was very emotional. It was very emotional. A lot of like, and this coordinator crying, also like me crying, my wife crying, daughter crying. But it was wonderful emotional moment, and a lot of people was just looking at us. Like, I don't know, it was something amazing. What you just see, what you just can see in these videos, on the Instagram, on YouTube, how somebody came back from the place like nobody can escape, and they came back. And also interesting, like probably 50% of people, no, not in my fire station, but like in our department, thought that I will not come back, but I came back.
Fantastic. Thank you. Victoria, you have a follow-up?
Well, that's wonderful. I'm really, really happy that you had a chance to meet them. So hopefully you will see them again.
I will. They asked me to go to visit them again after the winter. The coordinator of Sepamaha will come to me to my station in 1 week, because during my trip in the Poland, I also found another truck for the Kharkiv garrison, but it's not brand new, it's old one. But also foundation helps me with that because they give me the contacts of people like mayors, the department chiefs in Poland, fire stations who can speak English or who can understand Russian or Ukrainian. So I made like 4 calls, and on the first call, I found a guy. No, the guy told me, "Hey, we just also wanna buy a new truck, but we don't have enough money for it." So I asked foundation, can they help them to Poland fire station buy a new truck, so I can take the old one, and we have this deal. Also, when I posted like that we need masks like for exhumation, we already I already don't need like any help if somebody wanted, because the also foundation bought for us 100 masks like this and 400 cartridges for them, like for exchange. So we are happy with that. So like, yeah, so like this.
Thanks a lot for the answer, Roman. DFA, you have a question?
Yeah, hi. Just a little observation for with regards to Roman's work. Roman, massive respect to you and your colleagues, my friend. That's quite something that you are doing, and I hope you understand just how significant it is. I'm sure you do. I'm an ex-intensive care paramedic from New South Wales in Australia, and I work closely with our fire brigade colleagues who conduct the rescue function here, as well as their regular firefighting duties. And even amongst that, urban search and rescue is a highly specialised skill set, certainly here in Australia, with the dedicated units, to rescue people from collapsed structures and so on. And I guess what I'm getting at is that amongst your firefighting duties, you're constantly faced with this this high operational stress from working in and around collapsed structures. And so, Roman, I just wanted to say a massive massive thank you and respect to you. Well done, my brother.
And I want to thank you very much to you as well. And you know, it sounds like Australian because usually when Andrew, the Australian guy firefighter who also like main goal is search and rescue, started to speaking with me, and he forgotten that he's Australian. He speaks fast. I can understand almost any word, but I understood each word you said right now. So thank you very much also.
Roman, I was a paramedic, so maybe I was a little better educated than him. No. But no, listen. Just as another aside, like I'm living a happy life at the moment. Just driving back from the beach, and I was having a surf, and there was one other guy in the water with me on this particular break, and we were chatting, and I could hear his accent, and sure enough, he was a young Russian man. And we got to talking. I made the observation, I'm sure you're glad that you're here and not there. And anyway, let's just say I educated him as to how the world as a whole, the Western world certainly, perceives Russia and their conduct. And maybe that was a little bit aggressive of me in the water, but yeah, he's in contact with people back home in Russia, and he knows people that have been drafted to the front, and presumably knows people that have been killed. So, I struck a blow for the cause of good, as I see it, by educating him as to how the world sees the conduct of his country.
Yeah, you got it. Super.
And you don't need to be called for it. You can just jump in, right?
Thank you, DFA. I have one more question. You said today that you are training your men. Are you training them on the new trucks that you're firefighting trucks that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, just on them because I don't want to call everybody just in the fire station to learn it, because yesterday I've been learning another shift. Today is a new shift, so I've been learning them, but also I have a lot of stuff to do, and not only this. So I just came to the fire station. I have like 2-3 hours. I done it, and then I leave. So it's not just I talking how to do it. I just forced each one to push each button which I learned them to do, because it's very hard to break this new fire trucks, and they are very easy in use, and they have like some functions which we have been dreamed only about, like in our past, like we are driving our and using our old trucks. And almost each firefighter thinks, oh shit, it will be nice like if we can spray this water and just drive on the burning grass in the forest fire and just extinguish it in while we're driving. Yeah, right now it's possible. Also we have high pressure how do you call wall gun, high pressure, not nozzle, you call it nozzle, high pressure nozzle. So it's like 60 meters, and it makes 45 atmospheres, or like 45 bars, or 4.5 megapascals. Like I know which measuring will be understandable for everybody. So it takes much less water, but give a very big pressure. So the trucks just brand new and they're working fine. And the fire driver, he just need to turn on the switch and for engine of the truck to the pump, and then just push 2 buttons and everything is ready. And then just if we need to push another buttons, but it just only pushing buttons, so it's easy as hell. And just and also some additional functions. So I just spent a lot of time to just teach, not like whole crowd of people. Of course, I've been showing first to all firefighters what the new possibilities of this truck we can use, but I just definitely spent 2 hours with each of 4 my fire drivers right now on the shift. I have 4 fire drivers, so I spent almost 2 hours with each of them. So now I can be sure that they remember it and will use it and will not break it.
Thank you very much. Ben?
Yep. we've got two listeners who came up when Roman joined us and are not lifting their hand. I assume you have questions for Roman. Khatesh?
What? You asking me something?
Oh, no. There are listeners who came up when you came up at the, well, right after. And I assume they have questions for you. But they're not raising their hand. So I'm calling on them to do it if they have, if they want to ask you something.
How to raise a hand? I just wondering. Ah, here, I got it.
Roman,
okay, got it.
You don't need to raise your hand.
I just for the future, maybe.
No, even in the future, you just come in and you ask all the questions you want.
All right.
And have you seen the absolute unit you have as your profile picture? No one is going to stop you.
Got it. Thanks. But if no questions, maybe I can go to sleep if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was
Questions,
again.
you can go to sleep.
Okay. Thank you very much again for having me, and for me it's always a pleasure to speak with you. You also just recharge me with some positive energy every time I'm here with you. So thank you very much for all of you. Thank you for supporting, for everything. Bye. Good night. Good day. Good
Good night.
morning. I don't know.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much again.
На добраніч.
О, на
Слава
добраніч. На добраніч. Героям слава. Все. Смерть ворогам, русські підараси. Все, нахуй. Блядь.
Добраніч.
Добраніч. Добраніч. Все. Хай щастить всім.
Sorry, I'll use this one again, just to finish the greetings. Thank you very much, Roman, to have joined us. Thank you very much, Anda, to have organized it, and Victoria for coming up. TFA, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to. Hopefully, Roman is still there, but I just did want to ask him about the welfare and well-being of himself and his colleagues. It's the operational stress is just huge on these guys at the moment, guys and girls. So I'm hoping that they're. Well, first of all, I'd like to ask him how are they and are they coping and are they getting the help that they need to cope?
We'll make sure to ask him next time he comes over. One of the few things we can say is that guess who's back? I mean, if anything, I would recommend more sleeping for them. Oh, okay. Roman is back again.
I can also see him as speaker.
Yep. Hello, Roman. You came back? Okay, Roman, we cannot hear you. I'm going to drop you and bring you back. If I can, but I cannot find you. Where is Roman? Can't find Roman.
I think you have some ghost speakers on the panel. I don't know.
No such thing.
No such thing. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Is he connecting again? Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, sorry. I just didn't. I just turn off my mic, but I hear the question. I didn't want to leave it without answering because okay, I got it. I'm telling you, like usually here, people not used to have any psychologist help I mean, firefighters here trying to be so tough as they can. I know, like, oh, we don't need this, we don't need this. Yeah, usually what can affect us is really when we are seeing the fires, not just even the war zone, but even during the peaceful time, when the dead kids, that is always very harmful. And usually after the shift, firefighters being drunk as hell. So we just, like self-therapy or something like that, and they are always resisting about any psychology help. But first months of the war, only like in the middle of the second month, the fire department just almost, no, not forced to us, but fire department just sent to us like 3 or 4 psychologists, and they just been gathering us in the big room and just ask, hey, please, if you don't want, just, we've been in this office and this office and this office. So I gave them offices, and anyone can just go in and speak about everything they want. And it was interesting, there was no laughing, no nothing. And no, I also instructed the guys, so if I will hear that somebody laughing about someone who just needs psychologists to speak about, he will be punished by me. So there was no laughing at all. So a lot of guys just probably half of my fire station went to this psychologist, to the offices, and sometimes maybe like one time in 2 months they come in here and just somebody wanted to speak, somebody not. So I mean, right now it's like more, for me it's interesting because it was never like, oh, chief, I need a psychologist, please, like tell give me something. Or even after strong big fire, when we just seen some killed people, or died people, dead people, we never just, well, we don't have this procedure that you need a psychologist or something. So right now it's just happening, and I see like people don't mind about it. But I know we are okay, we are fine here. And also our department sends from each station every 2 weeks to the Odessa, to the sanatorium in Odessa, two persons. So this, like, no, it's almost forcing. So they just told us every 2 weeks, each fire station need to send 2 people to the Odessa, to the sanatorium. So like this, maybe, no, I think it helps somehow, some kind of, to refresh their mind. Also, just my work trip, it was kind of hard, but I was really happy to see my family and to see the Europe in the first time, to have a first fly in my life. So I'm also refreshed. But my schedule was like, I wake up probably at 5:30 a.m. Go into breakfast, because hotel makes breakfast already at the 6 a.m. So I just go into breakfast 6 a.m. and we are going with the coordinator of Sipomaga to the different places for different interview, for the different plans, for the different fire stations, like, and coming back to the hotel like 9 p.m. No, 9 p.m., 8 p.m. Once it was almost midnight. So I also didn't have enough time to spend with the wife, but it was like 2 vacation days for us. So like I also during this stuff come back refreshed and, like full of energy, full of everything. So I think when the guys from Kharkiv going to Odessa for 2 weeks for resting, for the healing, for the everything, it also helps them somehow. So this whole like this, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did.
So now I can say goodbye again to everybody. Can I?
Thank you. Thank you very, very much for everything.
So I hope see you soon later. And good night, добраніч всім. До побачення.
Good night.
Good night. That was so cute. First time he flew. Okay, I'm not saying that first flight taking you to Poznan was the dream flight, but it's a beginning. Hopefully someone in the space at a beautiful beach house that he can lend to our friend Roman at some point. And his family, and if I'm to understand, charming wife and beautiful daughter. Okay, so I think I was in the middle of thanking Victoria for joining us and Anda for fishing our friend Roman. But not tons of information, but let's put it this way. Burning burning a rail truck full of, sorry, a rail car full of gasoline cannot be good news for a bridge. And my vast knowledge on the subject comes from the fact that I had once a car on fire right in front of my house, and it exploded the how do you say, the stoned sidewalk next to it that just was disintegrated by the heat. So based on this, I'm saying no good. There's also a number of videos where you can see workers at the moment removing cars from the bridge, which also leads us to think that how did they because okay, sorry, let me roll back a little bit. Several hours ago, even yesterday, there were already images of a train coming out the reaching Crimea from Russia, saying that, oh well, you see the train bridge is open again. And then today we have images of the exploded rail car being removed. And I'm no railway specialist, but I'm pretty certain if you've got a broken rail car on your tracks, you cannot get a train through this. Enda, you're a smart girl. You know a lot about railways, as all Romanians, I'm being told. Can you confirm that?
Probably you oversell my knowledge and my intelligence. Probably if Craig would be here, as he loves trains in any shape or form, would give a more informed opinion. But what I gathered from today's discussion, even there is a very good possibility that the railways and immediate structure under the train to be damaged, not necessarily broken, but damaged enough to necessitate repairs and or change in order to be how do you say, to be used in a safe manner. I remember we had someone in the space earlier today, and that person said usually there is a train, a special train, which is a testing train equipped with all sorts of sensors which can give you much more information on how the railway is, how the train is faring, the wheels and so on. And to my understanding, they didn't try to use such a train. I don't know if they have one. I don't know how they test or are going to test this going forward. I can only hope that the damage is good enough or strong enough to impair the transit for a longer period of time. I see Wendy has his hands up. Please help me with this.
Andy, you put that wonderfully. I'm just absolutely astonished that the footage that Ben referenced that we saw released last night, which was pitch black to begin with, and purportedly showed a train moving over a bridge somewhere on this earth of ours. I'm just Ben, are you really saying that this train didn't somehow levitate over the wreckage of the fuel cars and make it across the bridge? Because I just assume that's what trains do.
Well, no, it's fairly rare for trains, but considering the fact that the Russians are short on what do you call those? Rolling? No, not rolling.
Engines.
Ball. Come again? No, the
Engine?
engines. No, the little balls that go into the wheels to make the wheels go round.
Ball bearings.
Ball bearings. Thank you. Oh, okay. My joke is dead now. Considering they're short on ball bearing, levitation is a very strong option for them. But yeah, okay. Dead joke. Forget about it. Now, Wendy, I need you and Victoria and then John and Khatish, whoever you are, TFA, and Abdullah. I need you to say goodbye to Enda, to force her to go to bed. Otherwise, we're gonna have to slap her.
No, thank you. Not in public. Go.
I'm a father of a little girl. I am used to use force to force little girls to go to sleep. So now, go. It was fantastic. I think she's a testament of the effort that so many people put in this space, in this endeavor in general. There are tons of people working in the background. There are tons of people just doing the calendar to know who's going to speak when is a massive effort, and would like to take the opportunity to thank everyone, and in particular Enda, who just finally left and is going to enjoy her 2 hours sleep before leaving. Before coming back, I mean, she's coming back very, very soon. So now that I'm pushing away all the speakers, next, Victoria, what time is it in your place? And should I threaten you with physical violence, put you to bed as well? No, don't answer this. Please don't. Okay, so talking about threats.
5:50 p.m.
Nap time. Have you had your nap?
Yeah, like 2 times.
Okay, good. So no physical violence for you. But I'm going to do something much worse. I'm pulling out my notes on the economy. You still have. I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to come to the panel and stop me. So it's 51 on my screen. If at 56 no one has come and asked questions, I will move on to some of the most tedious aspects of the war related to economics. They're tedious. They're crucially important in my eye. Like some of the information that I've been given over the past few days could be as important and as impairing for the Russian war effort as the destruction of the Kerch bridge. Don't get me wrong, I think it's absolutely crucial. It deserves a lot more attention, both from the media and from us as well. But it is also very, very boring to talk about. So I need you guys to come up and save yourself from this. Otherwise, I'll do my utmost to make it entertaining, comprehensible, and I see that my threats are working. Carl is joining us. As a rule, you should not threaten an audience, but we're at the end of our rope. Carl, oh no, he hasn't connected yet. Carl, are you there?
Sure, yeah. So I'm not sure if I actually went away for a few minutes to listen to his lengthy speech, so I might be off track. But one thing I just want to point out regarding the rail bridge is, and maybe you guys actually covered this, but the sound of the tail end of what I heard, I think it seems there's a presumption that it's like just one track, but there's two sets of tracks on that rail bridge, and that can be verified like with satellite maps. And also I believe I've seen a couple of photos from on the bridge itself where it showed the burnt out rail cars and then another track beside it. So while I doubt that specific video to probably just be Russian propaganda, I would presume there is a possibility a train could go on the other track with less risk and more ease than on the one that had the burnt out trains.
Yeah, I assume that you can get a train to go in both directions. I also assume that burning is not, if you have a rail track burning right next to that rail track, it cannot be good.
Yeah.
In any other circumstances, they would not have gotten a train on it. But
yeah,
users can
the
be
risk
pickers.
reward calculus would not make any sense for kind of rational Western countries or companies, right? But I could imagine that they might take that risk in this sort of situation. That's all I had to say.
But Carl, a train going over that bridge, that requires a train driver, and I pity the poor bastard that's the first one to go over it.
Yeah. No, and it also seemed odd to me that they'd even consider sending a long train with a bunch of carts as the first thing, right? Like somebody said that you'd first send a tester, but let's say you didn't have that, you'd in my mind you'd first just send the little engine that could, and go relatively slow. But who knows? I'm done trying to understand the mind of those in the Russian regime.
Yes, what was in those? What is going to be in those cars is quite a question, isn't it?
Yeah, and in the end, right? Whether whether Ukraine has impacted the logistics past 72 hours for 10%, 5%, 90%. The value of the strike is still there, right? From the message it sends, from the morale boosting, But we can always hope that it will will have a tangible impact on their logistics as well.
Indeed, you're right, Carl. We've had some excellent speakers, as you've probably heard over the last 24, 48 hours. Gosh, how the time flies. Describing the basic result that to be a Muscovite soldier in Kherson Oblast right now is not a healthy place to be for them. So we've got a few hands up. I'm the lucky one, you see. We're Ben. I've got people here with their hands up, so I don't know. Maybe they like me. Tom, I believe you were first, sir. Please go ahead.
So I actually did a bit of looking at into that video, and in the video you can see a sort of distinctive set of second rails inside the main rails, which are, I think, generally used to make sure trains don't derail in a bad way. And if you look at the photos of the bridge on Wikipedia, you can see those same rails. So I think they're pretty unusual. You don't get them in most places. So I think it probably was actually shot on the bridge. But of course, what you didn't see necessarily was a train going all the way over the bridge. So it's not evidence that they were running trains all the way over the bridge. But also, I saw there's another photo I've seen on Twitter today, which is of the track directly next to the track where the burnt out cars are, and it doesn't look like, it looks like a little bit burnt up and nothing that a Russian rail crew couldn't take care of by ripping up 40 yards of track or something and replacing it. It's probably, you could run a train over it right now, but it wouldn't be something that would last 10 years or something. So it didn't look like really messed up, and it's really not clear to me that the damage on the one track really extended that much to the other track. So while I'm sure they have to clear out the burnt out wagons and repair the track on the other side, it wouldn't surprise me if they were running trains on that in the next day or two. So, but that's it.
Thanks. I guess as a consumer of occasional consumer of rail services, but not an expert on them, Tom. To me, the word "rip" when it comes to talking about train tracks and replacing them, it's pretty disheartening, and particularly for a rail bridge in the middle of the sea. Yeah, I guess that's a very interesting point. Whether, I mean, like you said, there appear to be parts of the parts of the structure which should not be exposed. They have been exposed by this. The steel has been subjected to a huge amount of heat. I believe the melting point of steel is 1600 degrees Celsius. Please correct me on that if I'm wrong.
I mean, I'm not so sure. Like, remember the fire was happening on top of the bridge for the most part, and there's a lot of concrete before you get to steel. I mean, there's a lot of ballast, and then there's a lot of concrete, and it's not actually clear that the structural elements supporting the track on the one side, even if it did burn to the point where the steel was fatigued on the side where the wagons were, it's not clear that it would be similarly damaged. So you've got two questions. One, did the heat above the bridge cause damage through the concrete to the steel that's actually providing the structural strength? And then secondly, did it spread sideways enough such that it actually damaged the structure on the other track, because there'll be separate steel beams under that side of the track.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, David's got his hand up, but I think has got something to say on this. So, David, please go ahead.
I think we should not talk about it with so much certainty, because from what I saw in the video, most of the heat was directed up from the top of those tank cars. If you think about it like a candle, if you have a candle on your table in a vessel, if you put your hand above the candle, you're going to feel a lot of heat, but the table isn't going to experience heat. And I think the tracks may not have been damaged. I mean, as much as we'd like them to be, as much as we'd like to condemn their practices, the structure below got exposed from the side some. It may not be a significant level of damage, and we need another rocket to really take it out, I think is my guess, just looking at it, not being a structural engineer. I just think we should just treat it like another OCT thing. If it collapses, we know that they were wrong. Otherwise, they're probably just using the same shoddy standards they've used in the past, and there's something else to concentrate on. That's my suspicion.
Yeah, that's a fair point, David. Thank you for your input. We're very lucky to be joined by a guy who can provide great insight into this. Chuck Pfarrer, welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Great to be here, listening in. Fascinated as always.
It's been quite a 24 hours, hasn't it?
It has, and you guys have been goalies in the net of history as we all try to piece through what might and might not have happened. So lots to go over.
Thank you, Chuck. Did you get a chance to hear that magnificent interview with Thomas Thyner today?
No, and I'm sorry I missed that. It's Canadian Thanksgiving, so I was pretty much distracted all day. But you know, I do follow Thomas as just me and about several 100,000 other people, and I find his reporting always very well informed and reasonable. But I guess that we differ right now in some initial assessments, which you know, people are civil people are certainly allowed to do civilly.
Absolutely, indeed, and happy Canadian Thanksgiving to you, sir.
Thank you. Believe me, I'm stuffed, so that's all good.
Chuck, what's your take on the damage to the bridge and how much damage you think has been caused, and how long this damage will you know, how permanent this damage will be?
Well, there's of course there's two portions of the bridge that were damaged. There was the inbound to Crimea traffic lanes. Those were thoroughly interdicted, as we would say. There is the construction of the bridge has spans that are several hundred meters long that are supported on the ends and in the middle by vertical bridge piers. The place where the damage occurred on the Russia side of one of the piers, that appears to be the locus of the explosion. And beyond that pier in the middle, the remainder of the span also collapsed, I think, from the displacement of the shock. My best and most considered opinion right now is that there was one explosion on the bridge, that it occurred on the Russian side of that middle bridge pier. It's essentially the part of the bridge that is, again, on the Russia side, where the bridge begins its climb, so that marine traffic can pass underneath. There are a couple of things now that I can rule out, and I've got some reasons why. There's been some video circulating that supposedly shows the moment of detonation as it occurred. I'd just like to say this. Look, my assessment of this video comes from two factors. One, as a Navy SEAL, I am intimately associated and familiar with the way truck bombs look when they go off. I've actually survived two of them. The other thing is I've made 6 #1 Hollywood movies. And as a filmmaker, I'm not impressed with the video. As a Navy SEAL, I can tell you this. The explosion is the wrong color. The smoke is the wrong color. There is no blast wave. There is lots of hocus pocus with falling sparks and even some alleged splashes in the water. And folks, none of that stuff is real. It's not real. Don't base your assessment on that video, because I'm telling you, there are dozens of things wrong with it. Okay, I won't go into, well, I'll go into some things. This was multi hundreds of pounds of high explosives going off. If you happen to be tuned into that video right now and looking at it, notice the cars that are coming at you. They don't deviate from their lanes, not by an inch, not by a foot. They don't slow down. And contrary to what everyone sees in the movies, if you hear a gigantic bang outside your car, generally the first thing you do is slam on the brakes. And secondly, if multi-hundred pounds of C4 are going off behind you, a lot of times it flips your vehicle over. It slews it sideways. It does things to you. And none of those things happen in this video. They don't happen. Okay, so for that and a lot of other reasons, I'm ruling out the car bomb. It is possible to make a car bomb that focuses its explosions in one or another, a chosen direction, but generally they don't. The other thing that I'll use to drive a stake through the heart of the car bomb adherents, and anyone who is adhering a car bomb, I'd like you to explain to me how in Putin's Russia, somebody got a hold of, let's call it easy, let's call it a half a ton of C4. And you tell me they got the trailer, where they got the tractor, where they found a nice quiet spot to load all this explosives in here, where they were able to get the blasting caps and the det cord, satellite, everything that they needed to set this car bomb up. How did that happen in Russia? And if you say, well, the SBU did it, let me pretend like I'm President Zelensky here for a second. And this plan crosses my desk with the car bomb. And I say to you, as the head of the intelligence network, how many people do you want to put on this program? Well, I'll give you an estimate. I need 100 people. Okay, I'm going to put 100 of my best operators into Russia to do what? Where are they going to buy the explosives? How are we going to get them to them? Well, we'll sneak it across the border. Well, if you're going to sneak it across the border, why didn't you sneak it across the bridge? It just, it doesn't, guys, it just doesn't float. I mean, that doesn't float. Secondly, some sort of naval special warfare operation. Believe me, nobody wants to see frogmen blow that bridge up like I do. I mean, let's do it. But there is a hole in the bridge deck. I posted a battle damage assessment earlier this morning, or maybe it was yesterday. That clearly shows that the dropped section of bridge has got a hole in it. Okay, if you're a frogman coming from sea and you, by some miracle, make it to this bridge after inserting at least across 50 or 60 miles of the Black Sea patrolled by Russian patrol vessels, somehow you absolutely made it to the target, towing, fill in the blank of 100 pounds of explosives, you don't have 1 ounce to spare blowing a hole in the bridge deck. You don't. You've got to strike the abutments. You've got to strike where every pound of your explosive can do the most damage. That one little hole in the bridge, it may not look so much sticking out of the water, but what's underneath the water is the entry hole made by a missile. If we dismiss, if we view the truck bomb evidence, as I've said, and look, make your own decision. Absolutely, make your own decision. If you think for all those reasons it still is a truck bomb, if you think for all those reasons it still was an attack from sea, and by the way, if you were the frogman who actually got onto that bridge and planted those explosives, I've got news for you. You've got to get home. You've gone through a 50 or 100 mile insertion, and now you've got a 50 or 100 mile extraction. Possible? Yes, if you've got a submarine, but the Ukrainians don't have any submarines. Okay, so for those reasons, I'm looking at an ATACMS missile. You can tell me all day that the United States has denied. You're right. The United States said that the United States didn't send any ATACMS missiles to Ukraine. It didn't say that the UAE didn't send them. It didn't say that the Republic of Korea didn't send them. And conveniently, it didn't mention that Romania received ATACMS missiles 2 months previous to the Saki airbase attack. And the Saki Air Base attack, we went through a lot of this same stuff as well. I've had people direct messaging me, telling me that it was a commando raid. I mean, that's groovy, but look, I use a commando. And yeah, you don't have commandos dragging in hundreds of pounds of explosives onto an enemy airbase, which, by the way, the attack occurred at 9:30 in the morning. Well, they just put small charges and stacks of bombs that are, look, you don't leave stacks of bombs in the revetment area where there's 7 or 8 aircraft parked. You don't do that. You might have seen they're on little carts and they get wheeled up and their exposure out of the bunker is minimal. You wheel them up, you hang them on the aircraft pylons, you screw the fuses in them, and you let the airplane take off. So again, we went all through this in Saki. We're kind of going through it again. I would advise everybody, though, to look, remain calm and civil and polite. But if you're gonna, if you need to insult people and get your point across, hey, just be willing to stand up on the day the truth comes out. And I think when the history of this war is written, we're going to find out that Saki, at least 2 other targets that I can think of right now, and the Kerch Bridge were interdicted by a weapon system that Ukraine does not want to advertise, except to show the Russians that they've got it.
Thanks, Chuck. And your insight here is absolutely fantastic. Those images that have been gone over, and a lot of words have been committed to these images over the last 24 hours by various people. They came from the Russians. And they're films in not particularly great quality. I think. Thank you for adding your insight to the Mirror report once again, in a calm and reasoned, evidence-based approach. We've got a ton of hands up here of people who want to ask you questions, and so I'm going to go to, I think, first of all, Alan Brewer. Go ahead.
Thanks.
Hi,
Thanks,
Alan.
Wendy. Hi, Chuck. So I've watched those films at the moment of explosion. Are you saying they've been doctored for a propaganda purpose? And my second question is, I don't care how the bridge was struck. I care that it was struck. And so if you put this into a logistical context, what is the importance for Ukrainians on the battlefield? What are the opportunities they have now as a result of the Kerch Bridge being struck?
That is the bottom line, and that's where we ought to go. Great question. I'll point out that the bridge section that was interdicted was actually the road bridge, the portion of the road bridge going into Crimea. And look, you've got an ATACMS missile, and you can pretty much put that thing within 4 or 5 or 10 meters of where you want it to go. To me, it wasn't coincident, the incoming lane, because they want people to leave, right? If you want to drive out of Crimea right now with your family and your carpet-bagging uncle and everyone else who came into Crimea as Russian colonists, look, I hope some of you are listening tonight, Russian colonists. Go home now. Go home now. Go home before the other road bridge is blown, because then you're going to have a really hard time getting home. And I don't think you're going to be happy when the owners arrive in town. What this has done so far, and I think there's going to be more strikes on the Kerch Bridge as well. It's of course it's half the capacity for vehicular traffic, semis, etc., to come in. The best and fastest and concisest way, though, to move military supplies and especially sort of intact military units above battalion size is freight trains. You can move, your armor, your infantry fighting vehicles, your supporting artillery. You can put that together in a couple of train loads, including your people, everything that's organic to your unit, and move that in. The Russians were very quick to say, and remember, when someone says something to you, look at their facts, consider the facts, but always underscore your assessment with who has told me this and what would they like me to think? Not know, think. Well, the Russians were quick to say, we've sent a test train across and everything's okay. Well, there's dozens of photographs of the damaged, burnt, twisted, but not broken rail bridge going in. The damage to that section, although it appears superficial, and I don't believe the rail section was the target, but you had, half a dozen burning tank cars there. And they have an effect on the load-bearing characteristics of the bridge elements. They have quite an effect on the rails themselves, and generally rails are sort of easily fixed. You can blow out 100 yards of track, in a demolition raid, and you're really only talking about a 24-hour disruption, and perhaps even less if the enemy's got their railroad logistics together. But what's the effect this is going to have? Principally on the Kherson Oblast battle space. This is going to further constrict the logistics of the 49th Combined Arms Army, which is nominally the unit on the ground there in Kherson. And again, this is part of Ukraine very thoughtfully preparing that battle space. They've made some more territorial gains in Kherson today. I wasn't able to get a map up, but started working on one. Everything that crosses into the Kherson battle space has to cross the Dnipro River. And as everybody knows, the highway bridge, the M14 Anatovsky Bridge into Kherson, is interdicted. It was taken out sort of one HIMARS round at a time, punching holes in the bridge deck. They weren't able to very accurately target just abutments and bridge piers. You might still be able to cross the bridge on foot, but it's of no use getting heavy equipment, armor, logistical vehicles, anti-air systems. So everything that comes into the Russians' portion of that battle space has basically got to be put on a ferry and brought across. And they're running short of food, ammunition, spare parts, fuel, supplies, everything else. And again, this is part of the Ukrainians preparing the battle space. It's better to fight a hungry, confused enemy who's running out of ammunition than it is to fight somebody dug in and with ammo racked and stacked. So very long answer, but to wrap it up, I think you're going to see another strike on the Kerch Bridge, and I think this time we're going to see we're going to see a strike on the rail portion of the bridge, and that is going to do more damage than just to the incoming and or outgoing track. If we were looking at if we take the damage that we see in the road section, if that were done to a rail section, I'm not going to say it's game over, but we're looking at 6 or 7, 10 months to repair that. And the damage we see right now to the road section, I think it would be a little less than 6 months to repair it, but still a big problem for the Russians.
Thanks, Chuck, for your analysis and for your service. You're as clear-headed as always. Thanks, and I'll drop down to listening. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Chuck. One thing that I guess strikes a lot of people, Chuck, is that every time Ukraine hits these strategic targets such as Saki and the bridge, it leaves the Kremlin a smidgen of an opportunity to sell a lie to the diminishing number of people in the Russian Federation that must believe these lies, and it's almost like the Kremlin is having to dance to the tune of what Ukraine is dictating. Ukraine is performing a form of maskirovka on the Russians, and it's almost like they've got the Kremlin in this Gordian knot where any of these strikes, the Kremlin has to explain away with, oh, it was a suicide bomber this time, or it was a smoking accident in an airbase. It's just an incredible headlock that the Ukraine is dictating. Yeah, it's absolutely an excellent strategy to observe. Next person with a hand up was ZZ. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I recognize that I should probably change the Z's, given since February 24th. But anyway, my question is, I subscribed something that Thomas said earlier was Putin's had a chance to escalate at each one of these opportunities. Like, so for example, Moskva, when we talk about Saki, Kerch, and Western Crimea earlier today, I would add in Nord Stream pipelines, to be honest. But he doesn't escalate. And I think it's important to point out. I thought Thomas pointed that out. But the question I have is, then why does he mobilize another 100,000 troops when it's pretty clear their air defense, assuming these are ATACMS, which I do, S-400 sucks. They can't defend. They're completely vulnerable. So why mobilize then? That I don't understand.
Well, that's a really good question, considering what he was able to scoop up in the first mobilization. I believe he was authorized. The fine print said he could mobilize 1 million men. I believe the first tranche was 300,000, and at least that many. And I've read as high as 500,000, but I think the number's probably 350,000 of the target demographic. Split the country. So it was even worse. I mean, you've got these draft dodgers. I don't mean to say that because, believe it or not, I respect conscientious objection. I actually do. But the people that left were exactly the people he was trying to mobilize. And there were only of X number of military age men available for conscription among the Russian population. He has to realize that he's getting blowback in the streets. There have been draft offices that have been firebombed, etc. I'm not one of those people that think that there's going to be an insurgency or this smoldering revolution in Russia. That things are a bit more complicated than that, especially because these are people who live in a police state, and a lot of them, let's say 25% of them, they realize what they're being fed. They realize that they don't have freedom of speech or security in the rights granted to them by the Russian Constitution, and they know to keep their mouth shut and to go on with this until it really looks like there's a path out. The other thing about Mr. Putin's mobilization is it's futile, in that if he were to get his hands on 350,000 people with 2 legs and 2 arms and as much head as you need to be a Russian soldier, these people are being delivered to the battlefield. I found these reports initially hard to believe, but people are being put on a bus with their gear or with no gear at all and shipped off and dumped in fields contiguous to the battlefield with no training, in some cases with no magazines, no rifles, no field gear. You just can't do that. I mean, a guy off the street is not a replacement for a soldier. And let's say somebody says, well, they can pull a trigger. Well, okay. But there's this thing in the military, it's called the tail to tooth ratio. And the longest tail to tooth is you've got Tom Cruise flying his Hornet and taking hurt to the enemy. There are conservatively 1,000 people working to put Tom in that airplane, to keep its systems up and running, its radar, its comms, its engines, its avionics, its actual flight surfaces, its weapons, its everything, including the guy that makes sure that Tom gets a hamburger and a hot shower when he comes back from his sortie. Okay, that's tail to tooth. Even in an infantry battalion, most people don't fight. There's logistics involved, there's artillery, there's communications, there's just all sorts of ancillary things that make necessary, that are necessary to support an infantryman. These mobilizations are not doing anything to help, and I think I'm right in arguing that they can only hurt, because you've got somebody who is completely untrained in not just the skills that make a good infantryman or a ranger or a paratrooper, but people who, if you put a compass in their hand, they don't know how to navigate. They don't know what to do if their rifle jams. They've never had an artillery round go off 30 feet away from them. They've never had to work together in a team. They've never been stressed in their life. They haven't even been through boot camp. If you feed more and more of those people into the battle line, the Ukrainians are going to eat their lunch. They're going to eat their lunch. So, man, that question is pretty good, and I'm afraid I can't answer it.
No, I appreciate you taking a stab at it, and thanks for all your insight, and for the hosts, I appreciate it as well. So, thanks all.
Thanks.
Abdullah, please go ahead.
Hi, Chuck. Thanks a lot for your time.
Hi, Abdullah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's say the Ukrainians struck the bridge. How many ATACMS do you think could have caused such damage to the bridge? And I have a follow-up question. How important was for the Ukrainians in getting control of Snake Island to carry out attacks like this deep into Russian-occupied Crimea? Thanks, Chuck.
Thanks, Abdullah. Good question. I'm firmly in the ATACMS camp, as you know, but right now it's looking like one ATACMS to me. As much as in the SEALs we have this saying that one is none. So that one of anything is never good enough, because it's going to miss, it's going to break, someone's going to lose it, it's not going to work when you want it to. So we've got redundancy and everything. But judging from the blast effect, it looks to me like it was one missile that struck the span, and by breaking the bridge through, it contributed to the other section also falling in as well. But I can't say that categorically, because of the two submerged sections that are supported in the middle, and they both go into the water at about 45 degrees, I've only been able to find one picture where I can state categorically that there's a hole in the bridge deck. Otherwise, I would have thought it was two missiles, but right now I could only, in good conscience, make a case for one. Regarding Snake Island, that was an interesting piece of rock. I think the Russians discovered that they might have been able and willing to keep filing people into that rock, but the Ukrainians were just keep hammering it. I think what really won the day for the Ukrainians is, as far as the Russians were concerned, it became just too costly to resupply the Russian troops on that rock. And again, the purpose for the Russians controlling it was they could extend their surface to air missile capabilities, and also that they could interdict Ukrainian shipping in the vicinity. I know that Ukrainian naval special warfare were involved in taking the island back. As far as I know, the island had been abandoned by the Russians, so it was a largely administrative takeover of the island. Given that it is in Ukrainian hands, could it be used as a forward operating base for naval special warfare? Yeah, it could. But again, of all the things you want to do in naval special warfare, you want to avoid, if you can, approaching a target on the surface. Of course, we've got high-speed boats, and we've got the United States, and we've got boats that are extremely low visibility. Even in my day, we had a boat called the Sea Fox that was completely invisible to radar. The United States didn't advertise it as being a stealth boat. They just said, here's our boat. And interestingly enough, the only thing that showed up on radar was the boat's wake at certain speeds. So we were able to make the boat visible when we wanted it to be. And again, that was a secret that we just hid in the open by neither confirming nor denying it. And I'm certain that the Ukrainians have boats of similar capability. I don't think they're the same class of boat that we were using. But again, Snake Island is sort of a good thing to have and not a good thing to man. As a forward special warfare base, yeah, absolutely, it could be. It would be a really good place for the Ukrainians eventually, or at some point, or perhaps later, to put some of their Danish donated surface land-based Harpoon missile systems. And that would extend their ability to deny Black Sea operating space to Russian surface vessels. And just remember earlier in the war, for example, in the Battle of MriyaReport, you had Russian corvettes within 400 or 500 meters of the beach, shelling Ukrainian positions. Look, those days are over. The Moskva is sitting at the bottom of the ocean. I don't know, a number of Russian support vessels, naval auxiliaries, at least several of their patrol boats are sunk. And that's because of Harpoon missiles. And the Russians don't dare to get close to the Ukrainian coast anymore. And that's a good thing.
Thank you, Chuck. Wendy, is it okay if I ask just one quick question, one more?
Yeah, please do so.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Chuck, this question I asked earlier. Do you see any scenario where the Ukrainians go for Crimea if they get the chance before they go for the other provinces currently occupied, so they could use that to shut up all these people who say you have to make peace, before and go back to the February 24th positions. Thanks.
Yeah, I think there was a time when Crimea was on the table. I think that there were some desperate weeks at the end of February. The Ukrainians and the Russians were in serious talks. And I think that there was a time where Ukraine would have made that exchange. I've said this before, and I'm not saying the war is going to be over soon. I expect this to go on for a couple more years. But I think we're past the point where Russia can win this. I think the Russians are beginning to realize that. I think even Russian troops in the field realize that they've had 9 different commanding generals in this special military operation. You get put in charge of this by Putin, and chances are you're going to be on the job for 4 weeks until you get fired. And they get fired, as we used to say in the Navy, relieved for cause. That means you're effing up. And that means the Ukrainians are kicking your butt. And that is what's going on. I don't think there's any reason for Ukraine to make any territorial concessions any longer. Crimea is Ukraine. Ukraine is Crimea. The Kerch Bridge is Crimea's most important lifeline. What I do expect to happen is I expect Kherson to be taken in the near future, not tomorrow or maybe even next month, but sometime this quarter. Then I expect the Ukrainians to move east along the Black Sea coast. And as they do that, they're going to cut off and isolate Crimea. And as we saw at Saki, we're going to see more strikes on Russian naval aviation. We're going to make it so that anything the Russians try to do based in Crimea is going to get hit. And I want to say how important it is that the Russian air defense environment. Look, a year ago, if you asked me how capable an S-400 system was, I would tell you that it's extremely effective, and you should do your best to stay 600 miles away from it. But the Kerch Bridge was protected by S-400s. The S-400 was and the S-300 were advertised to be able to intercept any land attack missile coming into their targets. Look, that doesn't happen. And I've got some strenuous direct messages today informing me that that there's no way an ATACMS could hit the Kerch Bridge because it's protected by S-400s. Well, again, you've got your S-400, and it fires an intercepting missile that moves at 2.5 times the speed of sound. The ATACMS is coming in from almost low orbit, 120,000 feet above ground level. If you're flying that high, man, at astronaut wings, literally, that's the cutoff for space travel. And it is coming down on the target in an almost perpendicular trajectory, moving at 3.5 times the speed of sound. And those are just the Wikipedia numbers. Okay, so you can do that. I mean, someone out there with a little grasp on Newtonian physics, the mathematical formula for the parabola is right there. The thrust necessary to get that warhead to 120,000 feet, and you can do the gravitational math. So I think we're looking at this thing's coming in at 4 times the speed of sound. So you don't have very much time to react, provided even that you have warning. And again, the Saki attack was preceded by, in the space of 36 hours, 3 S-300 batteries were taken out in the environs around Kherson. I didn't put that together until the day after the Saki attack, and I realized that those S-300s were taken out. Those missiles, they flew through the operating distance of those missile batteries. So there was no warning. And guess what happened in the 72 hours before the Kerch Bridge site? 5 air defenses were taken out. These were briefed by the Ukrainian general staff. And I will bet you that those air defense positions, they were in a trajectory. Those were the air defenses that were along the sort of line of sight of this incoming missile. So all these other sections of the war all come together. And Wendy pointed out, the Russians are forced to sort of make up excuses. Smoking That airfield explosion, it was an accident. And the latest explosion is the truck bomb. Because if you want to demean your enemy, if you want to make him seem like vicious cowards, all you have to do is reel out the trope of the desperate suicidal truck bomber. How could we, as good Russians and God-fearing Christians, how can we be expected to defend against something like this? Well, of course it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And again, we've gone through the reasons why. But these things are supposed to be the things that work for Russia. Their air defense, their electronics warfare, their signals security, their electronic warfare. These were supposed to be the things that they were great at, but they're not. And it's going to be hard to win the war with an army like this, with commanders replaced every 4 weeks. And for those reasons, I mean, I think the tide is turned.
Thanks, Chuck.
Good questions.
For the last time, there's no tides in the Black Sea. Did I miss something? Okay. Good evening, Chuck.
Hey.
So there's plenty of hands again, but our friend Colby has joined us. He's a mod. He's been here for a month. Some say he started on moderating on the space in January. That's how long he's been there. And I'm sure he has a question for you.
Thanks, Ben. I actually wanted to address the question of why Russia is even mobilizing, but if you want to go to the other hands for Chuck first, since I'm sure he has limited time, that's totally cool. I can field that one after everybody else is gone.
No, I can. I'm willing to give that an answer. I don't think he has any choice but to do it. I think that the brigade task groups that are in Ukraine, I think they're being attrited to such an extent that he has to do something to remand them. And remember, he's also being very selective about who he conscripts and also who he sends forward. You don't find a lot of Moscow-based units being sent to the front because he doesn't want to grieve. He doesn't want to deal with Moscow's grieving mothers or St. Petersburg's grieving mothers or any of the other bigger cities, because the intelligentsia and the middle classes of those places, they're not his fans anyway. And we've seen among the captured prisoners and certainly the orders of battle of the units engaged, that most of these units are coming from the Russian Far East. And he's also seeming to put the Russian ethnic minorities are making up the majority of the casualty lists. So, and again, the mobilization is completely botched. He's got the mobilization part right, but you have to deliver trained soldiers to the battlefield. And we were talking about inadequately trained infantrymen, but look, you need artillerymen, you need people to man air defense, you need electronic warfare experts, you need combat engineers, you need all these other people, and they aren't trained in a couple of weeks. It takes a year to train someone to use a missile system, and that's after basic military training. I think the mobilization went forward because he doesn't have a year, and somehow he thinks that getting anybody to the front is better than getting nobody to the front. But I'd say it's quite the opposite. You putting somebody in there that isn't going to be able to do anything except possibly throw his rifle down and walk towards the enemy with his hands up. That's not going to help you.
100%. I would just add that the thing about mobilization is it's as much about achieving political goals as it is achieving military goals. And arguably the political goals behind mobilization are even more important because Putin is concerned about being outflanked. And even though Russia is a dictatorship and a police state, he does have domestic constituencies he has to worry about. And he needs to ensure that he is not being seen as a weak leader that is insufficiently committed to the goal that he has set out to achieve. And there's a lot of people in the Russian blogosphere and even, significant positions of power. We can see this rivalry playing out at the high levels of the Russian state, all the blame games and finger pointing. And he's very concerned that he doesn't want to be caught up in that and blamed for this failure. And issuing mobilization shows to everybody that he is serious and he's committed to this project. And as you stated, it also serves the dual purpose of eliminating non-ethnic Russians within the Russian state, because in his view, and in the overall view of the Russian state apparatus that has existed for hundreds of years, non-ethnic Russians within the empire are a potential security threat. And so sending them off to die in their foreign wars is something they have always done, and it eliminates potential threats to the state. And he wants to do that to ensure that if there is some sort of power struggle that destabilizes things, he's not going to have the republics of Russia rising up and demanding independence, because that won't happen if he sends off all the young men from those republics to die in his war. They can't agitate for freedom back home if there's instability. So it's very much political, in addition to the military goals he's trying to achieve by providing more cannon fodder for the front.
Yeah, that's very well put. And the other thing is, these military units are organic to those, former states in the Soviet Union. So you achieve a dual purpose. I agree with you. You're burning up their military-aged men, but you're also destroying whatever nascent national armies they might ever call on in the future. But I absolutely agree with you. Everything is actually politics. Everything is politics. And the thing that comes after politics is everything is an information operation.
Thank you very much, Chuck. Before we continue with the hands, I just wanted to share a couple of good news. We've reached 32,400 subscribers, which is an important milestone for us. So I'm going to start drinking some tile cleaner for the moment. And beside that, I wanted everyone to give a big hand to Chuck and Colby, who are both great. If you want to follow them, please do so. And also, if you have it in you, to either retweet the space or send our friend Olaf Scholz, the Bundeskanzler, the message that we've been trying to pass on to him for the past few days. #Free the Leopards. #Free the Leopards. It's starting to take some serious momentum. So join the fray, have fun, and convince the Chancellor to free the Leopards. So thank you very much. After this few points, I think we can return to the questions. You're good. I want to be conscious of your time, Chuck. Can you be with us for a few more minutes?
Yes, absolutely. I've probably got a half an hour more. If you can stand me, I can stand it myself.
Oh, I can understand you, but I will never have the courage to tell you to your face. So, meantime, Carl, please go ahead.
Hey, Chuck. Thank you. I think that's a really interesting thought or insight that some of the attacks that Ukraine has done on anti-air or whatnot may have actually enabled this attack to be possible now. But my question, well, actually, I'll just get confirmation because I think your excellent summary in the beginning about the bridge attack probably answered it. So I'll just get maybe confirmation that what I heard is accurate, because I was going to ask about the second railway track and how much damage may have been done, because I've seen a few photos and videos. But just for confirmation, one, you're saying really whether there's much damage or not, it doesn't really matter because it could be repaired within 24 hours anyway. Two, the attack on the bridge near Kherson is more important and material to preventing the logistical supply of the Russians. And three, you believe that there will be an attack, hopefully sometime soon, on the rail bridge, on the Kerch Strait Bridge anyway, which will be even more material. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is, but I would say the damage to the Kerch Bridge, it's a strategic blow. I think in the larger picture, it's more important. Well, I can't say more important. It looms larger than the bridges blown into Kherson, although that is vitally important. I would also say that from what I can see, the damage to the Kerch Bridge is such that I think their road traffic is going to be halved for at least 6 months. It's going to take, I think, that long to replace that broken section. And again, I don't think it's a coincidence that the incoming lanes were blown. I think that President Zelensky is sending a message: is if you and your carpet bag came to Crimea, it's time to go home, and you should go home while you have been graciously provided with a road to get there, because soon, inevitably, there isn't going to be a road connection anymore between Crimea and Russia. It's going to be gone. And eventually, but inevitably, the road connection is going to be gone as well. And those are important strategically. Look, hitting this bridge was also a political defeat for Mr. Putin. He conceived of this bridge. He's the guy who had it built. This bridge is a product of the war. This bridge has not been there for the last 20 years. This bridge was started during the early stages of the invasion in 2014. It's, this is Putin's baby. This was where he wanted to put his birthday candles, and look at the shape it's in. So this looms large. So think of it this way: there's an extension cord that's plugged from Russia all the way into the 49th Combined Arms Army. There on the north shore of the Dnipro around Kherson, and that cord, half of it got cut closer to the socket. And this is a message, and this was an important blow, symbolic and strategic and logistically.
Thank you. I 100% agree on the overall impact and also the impact of the car. I was just curious about how material the impact on the rail was. With that, do you know if there are any services also, like gas or water, that go over the bridge or not? And that's my last question.
I don't know. We did get a look at the underside of the bridge, but I really wasn't looking for that. But it absolutely could be there. It would be unusual for gas connection, natural gas, etc. Those sort of things usually get laid on the seabed. You know what, though? There could be a power connection. I don't know. That's a really good question. That's a good question.
Chuck, there is a power connection. I cannot tell you exactly where it is because I don't know. But when was it? In 2015, I think, the power line was destroyed by chance. that was connecting mainland Ukraine with Crimea, and the Russians developed a new power connection from mainland Russia directly to Crimea. I cannot tell you exactly where the line goes, but it's unlikely that it runs very far from the bridge. But I cannot tell you for sure whether it's on the bridge itself or close or anything.
Wow, that's good to know. It makes perfect sense as well. Absolutely.
All right. So, good people. There's quite a lot of people waiting to join us. So if you have a question to ask right now, if you could drop, that would be much appreciated. So more people can come up and ask Chuck the question in the last few minutes that he's with us. In the meantime, we're going to go with Alan.
Ben, I think Lai has been waiting much longer than me, so please go to him.
Okay, thank you. A few went already past me, but never mind. I have a question. You said, Chuck, you are firmly in the ATACMS camp. I appreciate your analysis and the insight which you have given. But I personally, I'm not yet in any camp firmly, because I don't think that there's still a lot of open questions where we have no answers. If we would have, for example, residue of the explosives, then if it would be UNFO or something, then we would know, okay, it's probably a truck, because most rockets don't or missiles don't use that. And if we would have the salvage truck, we could analyze what kind of blast, what was it, from inside or outside, and so on there. And I don't know, there are a couple of questions which I would like to ask you. Perhaps you have an answer. For example, if the ATACMS can be placed like within feet, then why didn't, if it was a missile, why wasn't the railroad hit, but the road? Because the railroad is the main artery of the supplies for the troops, and if a hit like a missile was sent, I would have thought it would have been a more logical target. And the second question, do we know whether the Russians use civilian contractors for transporting, let's say, explosive material to the bases in Crimea? Because if they do, that opens a whole plethora of other options. For example, that it was an accident, or that there was remotely controlled charge placed in the truck with or without the knowledge of the driver, or there are all kinds of things which also open some explanation possibilities for the Russians. Even if, for example, if it would have been, it doesn't have to be a suicide bomber, but if the Russians would have had to admit that some resistance movement placed a charge in the car or in the truck, it would be quite embarrassing. So it would be better to claim some other option, accident or whatever. But basically the questions were that, do we know whether Russians use civilian contractors for transport of explosive things, and why do you think that the railroad bridge was not hit, but the road? Thank you.
Well, those are really good questions. Let's see. I'll answer them sort of as they return to mind. It's not unusual at all, I think, in any army to have civilian contractors moving, important logistics. So could it have been the sabotage of an ammunition truck? You know what? That is a possibility. But I'll circle back to why I still don't think it is. Why wasn't the rail line hit? I think that a decision was made at some level, and this was the first strike attempted against the bridge. I think to some extent this was a demonstration. I think one of the things that Mr. Zelensky wants to do is demonstrate something to the Russian colonists in Crimea, and that is that whatever escape route you always thought you were going to be able to count on, I've just cut that in half. I didn't cut it completely, but I want you to know, citizen of Crimea, that I now hold my destiny in your hand. So that's why I think that the road was interdicted instead of the rail. I do agree with you. The rail is the strategic. It's the more important and more germane military target. I can address this, and again, look, I don't know anything. I don't have any evidence before me that anybody listening, doesn't have access to. I have access to the open source materials that you do. I have a benefit, though. I don't know if it's a benefit actually, but look, I've been up close to truck bombs in my life. I've witnessed their explosions. I've witnessed their aftermaths. But with that, I also saw, as you did, look, I saw that film. And I may be the only SEAL in the world that can talk to you both as a squadron leader and as a guy who's made a lot of Hollywood movies. And I'm not buying that video. It doesn't look real to me. An explosion like that, it is of a different color. Things get darker quicker. There's a lot of atomized concrete that goes up in the air. The explosions they seem very dense. They go up into a big mushroom cloud and they darken everything. The vehicles on the bridge, they did not react the way that cars are going to react within the blast radius of. Well, let's look at the damage to the bridge and say, I don't know, at least 500 pounds of C4. Okay, and I've heard the ANFO thing kicked around also. High explosives have a quality that's called brisance, and that is essentially the rate of their detonation. And brisance is a term of art, and it means, almost, it's analogous to how much steel can this cut? How fast does this charge detonate so that it can shock and break and destroy hard things? ANFO is not a high explosive. ANFO is a it's a combination of high nitrate compounds and diesel fuel. And remember, I think we talked about this the other night. Look, when explosives go off, they don't really explode. What they do is burn rapidly. And that burn is called their rate of detonation. And the high explosive rate of detonation is several thousand feet a second. And the rate of ANFO is much slower. And ANFO is actually used in strip mining because it, as a low brisance explosion, think of C4 as a Porsche in fifth gear, right? It's powerful and it goes really fast. Now think of ANFO as a Ford Bronco in first gear. It explodes, but it moves very slowly, and it's much better at moving the earth. Yeah.
The ANFO was just an example that if such was found, then it would be definitely not a missile, but it was just an example. I don't claim that it would be an ANFO. But my point was actually, my point was actually that I don't know, you said you saw the video, because there are two. There's one video from sort of above, and one is below the railroad track. And I don't know if you have seen on that video, it seems as if the, how do you say, the towing, what's the front part of a truck called? I don't know. But anyway, the bumper, No, the where the driver sits. I don't know what's the technical term.
The cab. The cab.
Yeah, cab. It seems to verge to the right. in a few frames just before the explosion. I don't know if you have seen it. And that's, for example, is something what I think is weird. That normally it doesn't happen, and I have no explanation. I have just observed it, because it doesn't even, if, let's say, if you have a few ifs, if the Russians use civilian contractors, and if they just blew a tire, it could be just a freak accident, for God's sake. There are so many options, but I just wanted to ask if you have seen those frames. Basically, that was a follow-up.
Yeah, I don't think I have, but I don't ask this as a provocative question. Why don't you think it could have been a long-range precision surface-to-surface missile? Why don't you?
I never said that I wouldn't. That is surely a possibility. My point is just that at the moment I think that okay, we can rule out the boat pretty much, and we can rule out that it was bonking by NATO. But there are actually two viable options which remain, and I think the missile is
can
one
rule out
option,
truck as well.
and basically, but I think those are the most probable. Sorry, but I think that from my perspective, I don't have enough undisputable evidence in either direction. So I keep both options open. I absolutely don't say that it was not a missile. Absolutely not. It could have been very well. It's a very probable explanation. Absolutely. But I think in this space often we have so much weaponry talk. They say that if you only know a hammer, then all your problems seem like a nail. And I have the discussion seems to gravitate a bit in that direction. And I still keep my options open until I have more information before I decide. Thank you.
And that is, and you know what though, unconventional warfare, I keep my mind open to everything. But I will tell you this: if I'm wrong, I am gonna own it. I'm gonna own it. So, but it's good, and the other thing is, own guesses here, just like everyone else. And I am never going to argue with a reasonable person who is keeping his options open. Absolutely. For me, I'm at the high 90th percentile in confidence. But you know what? I could be wrong. And I can absolutely promise you, if I am, I'll own it. And I was the guy at the beginning of this war who never thought Putin would invade, because I saw strategic disaster for him. And I was wrong, believe me. And look, I'm still owning that. So I absolutely, I see your very reasonable points, and I acknowledge them. I've just drawn a different conclusion, but it's good to hear. I mean,
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just checked the other video, and if you find any explanation what's reasonable, then thank you. Okay, I'm
going to find it. Thank you.
All right, we've got a ton of hands up here, Chuck.
I just got to jump in. Sorry, can you hear my mic now?
Loud and clear.
Is the lead sniper in there still, or live sniper? Is he? Okay.
No, it was kind enough to jump because
All right. I just want to clarify a couple of things. Everyone's obviously in a free world. You're entitled to your opinion. I really want to tighten up language. I'm not going to let a comment. I know Chuck's very ecumenical. I'm probably not. I'm not going to let the comments end. There's two possibilities. If you want to say there are two possibilities, then you might as well say there's six possibilities and seven. Maybe it is a submarine. Maybe it is a dolphin with a missile. It's not a truck bomb. There are hundreds of reasons as to why. And the most, the most interesting comment that I've heard, people say, well, the cabin veers to the right immediately. Has anyone ever hit a deer? Has anyone seen anything flash in front of them and panic? I don't know, maybe a bomb in the second before you die would make you, grab the wheel and turn it. If it was a truck bomb, why would he do that with the truck, to flip it over last minute? It doesn't, none of it makes any sense. And I think common sense should prevail. And I have to say this, not trying to speak from a position of authority, the argument from authority, but every single person who is either not just in the military, but has experience with IEDs, who's seen them, who've experienced them, And there's not just one person who has, many people in this space have, people who deal with the aftermath of it, people who know everything about artillery, including people who operate ATACMS, have all said it's an ATACMS. We could all be wrong, 100%. Yeah, there's a chance. Is it probable? No. Is it possible? Sure. But, and then those who say, well, it could be this, it could be that. At the end of the day, it's the effect that was delivered. But I caution people, like friendly caution, consider your sources. Someone who, counted as much as it's great to have logistics experience in the civilian Department of Defense world. I'm obviously talking about Trent, who has written this incredibly bizarre long rant about how it's for sure a truck bomb is it a suicide truck. Completely untrue. I'm not even mad about it because it's a Russian talking point, because it's so idiotic. I'm mad that people who really ought not to speak from that position of authority say or infer they have a position of authority because they know they don't. There are several key factors that we discussed with Thomas, and I'm glad someone else did it because it looked like I was being biased. You don't know the range of ATACMS. It's a secret. You don't know how specific and accurate they are. It's a secret. You also don't know the trajectory, and that's a secret. So figure out what I mean by trajectory. Why does that matter? Well, the Russian air defense didn't even go off. Have you quite considered that the Americans have a weapon that does not trigger Russian air defense because it's so far, so vastly superior to what the Russians have? If you're not thinking that, you're not thinking the right thing. So I just want to make it clear, I'm not mad or anything, but you're entitled to whatever opinions you want. But for the integrity of the space, please stop saying, well, there's two possibilities, is this or is this? No, there's one possibility. Are there other possibilities? Yes, there are. There's more than two. You might as well say it's special forces. They went there every day for 4 months, bringing 1 kilo of explosive material under their shirt and placing it in the place. You could say that too. So are those likely? Absolutely not. I just want to make that clear. I don't want to relitigate it, but I think we need to be honest with ourselves. And at the end of the day, we've explained the reasons ad nauseum as to why no one will admit it. Why are Ukrainian sources telling the New York Post what it was? Obviously, they want to create that confusion and the obfuscation. That's all I wanted to say. Sorry about that, Wendy and Ben. Whoever wants to jump in, please do.
Can I ask a non-related, very focused question, please?
Lunchtime. In a second, that's all right. We're just going to go to Gunny because I think he had his hand up before you. Gunny, welcome.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people want to speak on this, so I'll try and be brief. And we talked about this last night. Look, how many people have we seen on Twitter say, I am not a military person. I have no experience with explosives or structures. However, here is my take on the Kerch Bridge. All right. So that's the first thing. What you do have on the space, what you will visit the space for, is informed comment and not idle speculation. Informed speculation, looking at whatever evidence we can get our hands on, and then coming to a reasonable judgment that may be right, it may be wrong, but it's a judgment that we think, given everything that we can gather, makes sense to us. So Chuck and Yehuda have done operational tours where they have far more experience of IEDs, demolitions, all that good stuff. All I've got is hostile vehicle mitigation course, where we learn about means of delivering vehicle-borne IEDs to military establishments and some naval explosives experience. So here is the scenario that is being touted by people, right? Just think about this. A Ukrainian SOF team inserted into Russian territory, purchased or stole an articulated lorry. They moved that vehicle to a quiet location and either got their hands on 2 tons of military grade explosive or went about purchasing something like ammonia nitrate or huge big drums of hydrogen peroxide, created an improvised explosive device with the ability to punch through a structure, i.e. a shaped charge, and then either nominated one of themselves using straws, or had someone ideologically motivated enough to commit suicide, or got hold of some Russian and through coercion made him drive that vehicle, turning it into what we call a proxy bomb over the bridge, and then detonated it, destroying the roadway. Now, just think of the logistics of it.
I'm so sorry. You promised you made it short. Chuck is full of Canadian turkey and about to leave us. If you can just make it super short.
Yeah, I'll just wind up. So a shaped charge has to be close to or on the structure in order to work. You can't really make a shaped charge in your back garden or in your kitchen. It's a very complex affair. There are 1,000,001 logistical, operational reasons why a truck bomb simply wouldn't work. And I absolutely guarantee you the pressed steel of the cab towing that 3-ton IED would not veer to the right. It would go about 900 feet in the air, and it would cease to be anything more than about fist-sized fragments. So, you know, just listen to people in the know, and certainly listen to people like Chuck and Yehuda, etc., who've got operational experience of this kind of thing. All I can offer you is a knowledge of VBIEDs, and I'm 95% sure that it definitely wasn't. In fact, I'd go more with a torpedo, to be honest with it. Oh, it could be a torpedo.
Or magic dolphins. Well, thanks for that. Chuck, I know the turkeys are calling. Do you have to run? I feel bad.
Well, I've got 20 more minutes or so. I'm on a timer like most guys, but I'm happy to do what I can here, answer any question. And I would like to say that was a very reasoned and concise rebuttal to the truck bomb theory. And again, if you're putting forward that truck bomb, you're telling me that it's easy, expedient, and a good idea to try to put together a multi-ton truck bomb in Russia. And if you want to sell me that, how come it wasn't done earlier? If it's so easy, why wasn't it done before? So, and again, guys, you know what? And I'll say this: Yehuda and I have been there. We've seen them, and you know what? I would also say this: look, I've made a bunch of Hollywood movies. I know what special effects look like, and unfortunately, I know what the real thing looks like. So if you're trying to point out a piece of film to me, look, I haven't seen one yet that changes my mind. If I do, I'll be the first to tell you.
Gunny made a good point about the destruction of the vehicle as well, not just turning to the right. But at any rate, I'm sure it's somewhere at the bottom right now. Yeah, sorry, Ben. I don't know who was next.
Well, actually, I think considering the amount of hands and the little time Chuck has, we should try to do a rapid fire. So if we can go through the hands, everyone asks a question. I'll write them down, and then we ask Chuck to answer all 25 questions in one go. What do you say?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Jeopardy. I'm ready.
All right, who's next there, Ben? Because that was a good use of 45 seconds. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Who's the next?
Phil was next. Phil? Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, so I think it was Alan who was next, but I just had a real quick thing. Ben Frick had a post where he said he saw some distortions from satellite imagery. that suggests that the Russians have now turned on all of their S-300s in the area of Crimea. Would now be a good time to start using HARM missiles to target the S-300s that have been turned on for the past, like 24 hours straight, which they hadn't done since the HARM missiles, since they found out that HARM missiles are being used. And that was my only question. Thank you.
Phil, you hit it right on the head. And air defense is a little bit like having a pistol and a flashlight in a dark room. And you've got other people with pistols and flashlights, and you don't want to be the first guy to turn your flashlight on. I think you're going to see more air defense. Let's all listen to the morning briefing tomorrow from the Ukrainian General Staff, and I'm pretty sure we're going to hear of more air defense complexes destroyed, and that'll be HARM in flying and seed missions, suppression of enemy air defense.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so apparently it's Alan, and then we'll go to Prince Jens, and well, then we'll advise. Alan, please go ahead.
Chuck, I wonder if you would agree with me that the probability of Putin using nuclear weapons in some way is at the lowest probability since the war has begun. The reason being, he drew a red line around ATACMS. We all know ATACMS have been used. And what I'd say to Vladimir Putin is, it's ATACMS. You want to see more? What are you going to do about it?
Well, the other thing, as we all embrace various opinions on this bridge, look, let's all remember this. Right now, the Russians know exactly what hit them. They had their air defenses turned on. It didn't stop it. They're closely examining the data, the radar returns in the moments preceding the attack, following the attack. The Russians have been there on the bridge. They have studied the debris. Their chemical tests are complete, and they know the type of explosive used, and they know everything. I think what the United States said was that they weren't going to allow long-range missiles to be used against Russia. And I think that this is a bright, shining red line in American foreign policy, and I think it's a fundamental precondition of the aid and the provision of some of these weapons to the Ukrainians. And it is categorically, don't start doing to Russian cities what the Russians are doing to you. And I'm sure that is the precondition of this thing. And we all know that this morning Mr. Putin responded by using his precision strike missiles, I think a KH-101, to kill 87 people in an apartment building. Those are the kind of blows that the good guys sometimes have to take. But more ATACMS are coming. used. Look, the You're welcome.
Thank you, Prince. Jens.
Hey, Chuck.
Hey.
4 months ago, I added ATACM to my vocabulary. And the last 4 months, all of us has been fawning over the properties. And all of us have only had one fantasy target, right? This bridge. And now we hit it. And now we're looking for dolphins and truck bombs and other if explanations. I think, obviously it seems like it's an ATACM, but you know, Zelensky, he could hit the bridge today, tomorrow, the day after, and eliminate all doubts. My question to you is, would you hit it again to prove a point, or would you look for other uses of ATACMs? If you understand what I mean.
Yeah, we're gonna see more of them used. I think they're gonna be only assigned to the most significant targets. For example, the Saki Air Base, of course, the Kerch Bridge. There are a couple other targets I can think. I won't mention them on the air, but I'll be happy to claim that I knew that earlier. These, these weapons are, look, they're Ukraine's Sunday punch. And I think this first strike on the bridge, just as you've said, this has been a target that has loomed large for a while. We've all want to see this addressed. I think that when the history of this war is written, we're going to find that there is some connection with the recent gains on the ground in Kherson, with this, with hitting the Kerch Bridge. And again, we all saw this movie before, when people were trying to find out what happened at the Saki Air Base. Everything is the same, including kind of some gullible people at some of America's greatest newspapers, rushing to print saying there's a Ukrainian person who is going to be anonymous, and because he's not authorized to speak to the media, but he says it was a special operations raid. Okay, they said exactly that during the Saki attack. But you know who didn't say that? Not a single SEAL that I know. And we did have that similar situation. I've never seen a truck bomb detonate, but I've never led a SEAL team in combat, but I have no experience with military explosive, but this is what I think. And I'm going to get ugly verbally and type in all capital letters to everyone who disagrees with me. I don't need anybody to agree with me, folks. And you know what? I'm not trying to convince anybody. And I don't usually bang on this, but look, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about.
Chuck, do you think it's time that we tell everyone that we actually employed by the ATACMS manufacturer, and that's why we're like, we get big money to talk about, ATACMS, and it's just, that's why we're saying. Why do you think anyone? Why does anyone think I care? Like, oh, it's confirmation bias. What would you? I hate the artillery. I don't even like them. I've met 2 artillery officers in my life I liked before this, invasion, and one of them's CJ. And that's it. I have no interest in the RD. I wish it was, good old infantry, special forces types going, but it wasn't. I mean, it just
right.
I don't understand.
I'd like nothing better.
When are you getting your paycheck, Chuck?
Exactly. I get those big ATACMS dollars every week. Look, I'd love to tell you that this has all the hallmarks of a Ukrainian naval special warfare operation. But you know what, guys? First of all, I don't get paid anything. Second of all is I'm on here to give you the best information that I can come up with regarding the war and how it's playing out. And you know what? If I'm wrong, I'm going to come forward and tell you. But I think that I can tell by the tone and the stridency of some people offering other hypotheses. I can promise you that not one of those people is going to apologize. I promise you that there's going to be dozens of deleted tweets. I promise you they're going to be nowhere around when the history is actually written and it turns out that they were wrong. And at the same time, quite humbly, I can tell you that, look, I could be wrong too. But unlike some people, I've actually commanded SEAL teams in combat. I've actually dug through the wreckage of truck bombs with my own hands. I've actually seen them go up. I know how they're constructed. I know how improvised explosives are made. I know all of these things. And I would humbly put myself forward, in fact, as an expert in these fields. But you know what? I'm not trying to convince you. I'm pointing to the evidence that I have seen and that has made me draw my conclusions. And again, unlike some of my informational competitors, if I'm wrong, I'll own it, folks. I'll own it, but I don't think I am.
Sounds good. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I guess for some of us, I think maybe we're getting a bit of information fatigue. So it's strange justifying certain things that would seem pretty obvious. But I think most people will have to just get to the realization that the things that America brought, HIMARS, can fire multiple types of rounds, and just the reality is that the Ukrainians have them, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a crazy thing. It's not unrealistic. It's realistic. It's real. So anyway, I go over to you, Ben.
Edward, please go ahead.
Hi, good evening from Buenos Aires. Thank you, Chuck. You are an expert, and my God, I've been listening to this space, I think, ever since the bridge was hit, and I've heard it conclusively proved it was ATACMS multiple hours since then, and then we keep getting people kind of, oh, I used to demolish bridges, or I was, I don't know. It's just we need to knock it on the head at some point, I think. But one angle that interests me is that, rather like the right bank, west bank of the Dnipro, I wonder if the Ukrainians aren't quite happy to see a whole lot of material heading into Crimea, because at some point they're just going to seal all that off, and they'd rather it was there than in the Donbass, etc.
Spot on from Buenos Aires. Everything that they bring into Crimea is eventually going to change owners. And again, I mean, I did say this. You know, they've blown the road bridge going in. They didn't blow the road bridge going out. Sometimes the means is the message, right? The message to Russian carpetbaggers in Crimea is get out while you can. And you still can, as of yesterday. And everything that the Russians are shipping there is eventually either going to be turned into modern art, or it's going to eventually fall into the use of the Ukrainian armed forces. And I love the way you think. That was bottom line, right to it. And I agree with you. We can address this as much as we did the Saki thing, or perhaps we can just let it lie. And for me, the case rests, I think. But great statement.
Then thanks, Chuck. Well, I love hearing you here. Please keep coming back.
Thank you, sir. I can't help it. If I don't come back, Yehuda will come find me and drag me in. So
this is true.
He knows where I live. It's terrible.
We're neighbors. I bring him fresh basil.
You do, absolutely.
I
True.
wish I didn't cut it the last time. I actually cut it and I forgot to give it to you. I had more basil that night. Anyways, Chuck, thanks so much. I know you got to run. Say hi to the the better half, and we'll see you again soon, hopefully.
Thank you. She is beautiful, and I love her. And thank you, guys. And I'll be on soon. And I think there's going to be lots to talk about. So thanks again, everybody. Great questions, and good night from the Great White North.
Good night. All right, it is Thanksgiving, a giving of thanks, and it's at this time of the year. The Americans do it a month or so later. They got it wrong. That's why they also spell capital and defense wrong as well. But we don't hold it to them, against them, right, Chuck? He's already gone. Best time to insult the man's country is when he can't hear me. No, I'm just kidding. All right, Ben and Wendy.
Happy Thanksgiving, Yehuda, before I forget. And with that being said, Fallacious, please do go ahead.
Hello and happy Thanksgiving. So my thought was about